Namaste from India. Thank you. So this is the second workshop. I am Dr. Rashmi Agrawal, co-leader Evaluation Community of India. I welcome lead facilitators and all the participants to our technical workshop on program evaluation and process monitoring framework, which is being organized in association with Varghese Kurian Policy Lab, IRMA. Our lead facilitators are Dr. Shyam Singh and Dr. Vivek Pandey from IRMA. Dr. Shyam Singh is an associate professor in social sciences at IRMA. He was the scholar in residence at the University of Antwerp, Belgium in 2018. He has been engaged in evaluation and research assignments with various national and international organizations such as UNICEF, the World Bank, the award, and state and central governments. He is currently an advisor to the Rural Development Department, Government of Jharkhand. Dr. Singh was an expert committee member constituted by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs for the National CSR Award 2018 and 2020. He was also part of second National Common Review Mission constituted by Ministry of Rural Development, Government of India. So his interests include community development and governance, monitoring and evaluation, CSR, and social networks. I welcome you, Dr. Shyam. Our other lead facilitator is Dr. Vivek Pandey. He is development economist at the Institute of Rural Management, Anand. His work explores women's agency in the context of decentralization, market linkages, community-based organizations, and local governments. At IRMA, he leads the research efforts of the Varghese Kurian Policy Lab. I welcome you, Dr. Vivek. Development initiatives and policies aim at transformational changes in people's life. These initiatives require lots of resources. So are we able to achieve desired changes with optimal resources? And if these changes remain sustainable, these are crucial questions that comes to mind time and again in all of us. Thus, the challenge is to establish a causal link between interventions and outcomes and look for evidence for efficient and effective implementation. This workshop is designed keeping this aspect in focus. In this workshop, we will know various evaluation and monitoring tools and methods. It is interesting to note that the workshop intends to address concerns of various stakeholders at the same time, like donors, program implementers, policy makers, professionals, academicians, etc. Once again, I welcome you all and also request you to share the highlights and outcomes of the session with us. Over to you, Dr. Vivek. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Agrawal. Welcome everybody to this part of the technical workshop. So the entire presentation and discussions are kind of divided in two parts. The first part would focus on program evaluation, which I would be anchoring in, and followed by a discussion and presentations on process monitoring. And its framework, so we have tried to bifurcate almost roughly half the time to both these aspects. Let me start with the program evaluation part. Let me quickly share the screen, and if somebody can drop a message that the screen is visible, that would be okay. I believe that we can see.
Yeah, it is visible.
Thank you so much. So while preparing for this part of the workshop, there are very specific audience that we had in mind. We are basically not assuming any kind of technical background in evaluation, but definitely we do kind of believe that most of the workshop participants would have either themselves been engaged in some part of some way or the other in a program evaluation, or they would have consumed the outcomes of an evaluation exercise, maybe undertaken by a third party. So in that sense, the program evaluation part of this workshop is basically trying to really focus on the science of evaluation, because there is definitely an art part of how to evaluate, which kind of changes from one environment to another environment. When you go from an educational environment to an agricultural environment to a household environment, definitely the set of questions and the set of the types of program design, they would vary from environment to environment. But really, the purpose, the objective of this workshop is to kind of help us develop that view or that lens of seeing what are the those components of evaluation which are going to be common across these seemingly unrelated environments. And that's why I'm saying it as a science part, because we can get it by exercise, we can get it by a kind of a technical workshop like this. So a quick take through to the entire presentation that we intend to cover in 1 hour, 50 minutes, 55 minutes. We'll quickly delve into the idea of program evaluation. There is no anthology of program evaluation that I'm going to engage in, but just to kind of kickstart, when we think about program evaluation, what kind of problems do we need to think about when we have an evaluation in front of us? And since the entire workshop on evaluation is being seen from the causality framework, this is the framework that we're going to use. So I would like to kind of highlight certain challenges when we are trying to establish the effect of a program and its relationship with the cause of the program. So we'll bring out the causality framework, talk about various evaluation designs and frameworks. They lead to different types of data generating processes. So even though two different interventions may have very different designs, but may look very similar in terms of the data that they generate, but still the underlying processes can be different. So we'll spend quite a bit of time trying to understand that how these data generating processes need to be approached and how should we kind of gerrymander our evaluation approach in response to the evaluation design that we have. There is a very generic program evaluation formula that is the backbone of any evaluation exercise based on causality. We talk about the counterfactuals and comparison groups. Specifically, I would talk about a couple of evaluation methods and approaches like covariate matching and propensity score matching algorithms. And then we would like to kind of summarize this part of the discussion by looking at the kind of decisions that an evaluator has to make while choosing from a bunch of methods. And then we will conclude. So starting with a very simple question, what is program evaluation? What does it seek to do? Because we have various, we have come across a kind of a large set of objectives that program evaluation seek to perform. If you're talking to an undersecretary or a joint secretary in the government, they would have their word view of what evaluation should be able to do. Maybe it may have to do something with very simple as just help me understand whether the program was targeted well, or whether the benefits reached where it was supposed to reach, to slightly more sophisticated things like when it reached, did it create the intended benefits or not? Can we scale up the program next time period? And what should be the strategy to scale it up? The far more refined questions being asked now that, if we have to exit from a particular intervention area, how does the impact solution help us to understand what should be the exit strategy? So, but at the core of all of these objectives of program evaluation, the basic is to establish the cause and effect, the relationship between the program and the program objectives. So cause is the program, which is the stimulus, and the effect is the set of outcomes and impacts that we are trying to map based on the implementation of the program. And in the end, we should at least find a number, because it's a quantitative exercise. The program evaluation from the causality framework is a quantitative exercise. So we must receive an estimate of the effect of the program, and we would call it as an average treatment effect. It's an average treatment effect because it is not about it's not about a person that the program has an effect on, but somewhere down the line, we are trying to help the policymaker to understand that given a typical average beneficiary in your population, what would be the treatment effect to an average beneficiary? A typical, when I say average, it means kind of who represents the average characteristics in the population. So very quickly, program evaluation is actually trying to establish the cause and effect relationship. If just to kickstart the discussion on what type of cause and effect relationship we are trying to see, let's try to motivate it using a simple example. these some of the initial, very early studies on evaluation, which were happening in the early 20th century, were happening on agricultural experiment stations. They were trying to kind of really innovate newer types of inputs. And I've taken a very simple example. Let's say there is a new fertilizer, and we just want to understand its effect on corn yields. Now, let's say we have all the time in the world and all the possible resources that are required to understand the effect of this fertilizer on the yield is concerned. We can approach this simple problem. The cause is the fertilizer and the yield is the outcome, a very simple framework. We can approach this problem in broadly 4 different ways. So we can actually have a laboratory study kind of approach, where we can develop a laboratory setting. We'll kind of discuss it a bit more. We can have an experimental approach. In recent years, the experimental approach has actually picked up pretty well, both among researchers and implementers, and is well accepted as a serious mode of evidence. We can have quasi-experimental frameworks, which can come up. And then there are non-experimental ways of understanding this relationship between the fertilizer and the yield. At the base of any of these frameworks that we're talking about, the fulcrum is really the relationship. So as an evaluator, generally I'm kind of obsessed with the relationship part of the whole exercise. If I'm able to at least understand that relationship between what set of variables I'm seeking to understand, it kind of solves a kind of a very significant section of my set of problems that I'm going to face as an evaluator. Because if we don't think in terms of relationships, it's almost impossible to bring out any aspect of evaluation outcomes. So what we'll do is we go by these different ways of evaluating the effect or the relationship between the fertilizer and the corn yield. And we change these systems and we say how the data generating process is also changing. So just look at the start, very simply put, we have in the left-hand side are all the factors that can influence the right-hand side box, which is the yield, the corn yield. So the corn yield can be influenced by fertilizer, which is our focus of, this is our program variable actually. So this is the program, the new fertilizer. But there are a bunch of other variables which also influence the same yield, and we know them as covariates. And some of them I've listed. This is a very partial list: land, soil, weather, and a bunch of other host of other variables can also influence the yield part of the whole thing. And then third is an unobservable category that this is a set of variables which you don't observe, but they're there in the system, they're there in the environment, and they influence the yield. And I can give a very quick example. Let's say farmer's competence, the skill of farming. Does she or he understand the basics of farming? So definitely, the basic idea of connecting these unobserved variables with the yield is a critical matter, and we'll see how it kind of evolves over a period of this course of discussion. So once again, I'm just trying to put these 3 boxes on the left hand side and the right hand side into a very simple relationship. Yield is the effect that we're interested in, the corn yield, we're interested in that. And then we are saying it is connected with fertilizer, which is the cause. So remember, we are trying to have a cause and effect kind of discussion here, the program and the outcome. So the outcome here is the yield, and the program here is fertilizer. So fertilizer is the cause. The X are these variables other than the fertilizer, which is your land, soil, weather. All the things which you can observe are observables. You can go and record data on them, are called the X variables, the covariates. And then you have a bunch of unknowns, unobserved, that can also influence the same yield. So it's kind of very interesting that if once we have this basic relationship fixed in, it kind of helps me to develop the evaluation frameworks as per the design of the program, as per the availability of the resources, as per the availability of the time to evaluate a program. And all of it is going to have an effect on which method I'm going to pick up while evaluating the effect of fertilizer on the corn yield. Going to the next slide. Okay, so let's start with a very simple approach, the laboratory data generating process. Why I'm using the term data generating is because the fact that we are trying to interact the fertilizer with the land. Yeah, so there are two entities involved. Whenever two entities are involved, any two physical entities or environment or two people, their data is bound to get generated. Now, two entities can interact with each other in different ways. And one of the way in which they can interact is in a laboratory setting. So that's why I'm calling it as a laboratory data generating process. If they interact in a laboratory setting, a typical type of data will come up. If they interact in a non-laboratory setting, a different type of data generating process will come up. So as evaluator, we are trying to understand what is the framework in which the individuals or people and institutions, environment and people are interacting with each other. And here we are kind of superimposing a laboratory framework. Now what happens in a laboratory? It's very, if you think about our standard 8th and 9th, when we started doing these chemistry labs, we were always every time we wrote an equation, a chemical equation, we always said NTP, natural temperature, the normal temperature and pressure, NTP. If the normal temperature and pressure is maintained, then these two chemical compounds can come up and lead to a particular type of new chemical compound. Exactly the same set of assumptions, same set of practices we are trying to use here as well. So if you think about it, if I were to set up a laboratory to find the effect, the relationship between the fertilizer and the yield, how would I do that? The NTP, the normal temperature and pressure, was doing something. It was basically saying that if everything else in the system is exactly the same, then if I bring together two compounds, it will lead to a third compound. Exactly that's what we're trying to do here. If we make two plots of land, let's say for the sake of simplicity, if we say that let's make two plots of land physically the same. So by physical, I mean the land quality, the water quality, the amount of land, amount of water, soil, exposure to sun, rainfall, moisture, wind speed, everything. We're making them exactly the same. So this is physically we are making two plots of land exactly the same. And even the same farmer is working on both the plots of land, let's say. So in one sense, I have this normal temperature and pressure counterpart happening on an agricultural field. The only difference here is that in one set of fields, fertilizer is there. So the blue box on the top is the fertilizer, and just opposite to that is fertilizer prime, that white box. The white box is saying that there is a plot of land here on the left hand side and the plot of land on the right hand side. They're exactly the same. Why are they same? They are same because I, as an evaluator, has made them physically same. I have used my instruments to make them the same. And the only difference is that one of them have received the fertilizer and the other one did not receive the fertilizer. If that is the case, I can do a simple difference of the yield that I get from these two plots of land, and the difference in the yield can be attributed to the fertilizer. Now that's a laboratory data generating process. How is the data getting generated is very interesting to note here. Data is getting generated after establishing the physical equality of all the X and the U variables. So what are we equating? We are equating the X variables, which is land, soil, and weather. Yeah, in both the places they are exactly the same. And then we are also equating the U, the unobserved that we can think of. Okay, so This is a physical balancing based data generating process, and labs do that actually all the time. If we go to the next set, you may see that exactly in terms of the outline of this slide is exactly the same as the previous slide. Nothing is changing here. It's laboratory experimental. I am not changing anything in terms of the outlay, but this is actually remarkably different from the laboratory setting. The experimental setting is slightly different. In the experimental setting, there is an experimenter. The experimenter has a different task now. The experimenter, she is not making things physically the same. She is making things randomly the same. I'll give an example. How do you make things randomly the same? The basic idea of balancing, which I'm trying to focus over here, is to make things equal in two systems and then just change one thing in one of the systems so that we can attribute any change in the outcome to the change that we have introduced in one of the systems. That is the basic idea of balancing. Balancing is a very simple concept, but a very complex outcome to attain at times in evaluation exercises. And oftentimes, what we do observe is that it kind of receives the least attention from the evaluators. So if some of us are trying to go on more on the tech side of the evaluation, balancing is something that we have to really focus upon. Asking those tough questions is that are two systems, one that has received the program and the other one which has not, are they really the same or not in the absence of the program? So this is what balancing implies. In the experimental data generating process, as I shared earlier, the basic idea is that your the evaluator is going to randomize. Now, what does she randomizes? That is interesting. So let's say we have 2,000 parcels of land, small plots of land. Now, what is happening here is that the evaluator, you blindfold the evaluator. I'm just trying to kind of explain one of the ways to randomize. This is not the only way to randomize. You can blindfold the evaluator and ask her to go to every plot of land, all 1,000 plots of land, small parcels of land. They may be in the same place, they may be in different places also. And what is supposed to be done is that the evaluator does not see that where she is standing, on whose farm she is standing. Is it a rich farmer's farm? Is it a big farmer's farm? Is it a farm which has black soil or red soil, or does it have access to river water or other water structures? No such information is required by the evaluator before taking a decision that do I want to give this fertilizer on a particular plot of land or not. So once you blindfold the evaluator, the randomizer, you just ask her to place, let's say, a written piece of paper on which fertilizer or no fertilizer is written. So just let's say physically you're throwing those chits of pieces of paper on various plots of land. Yeah. So you have done these 1,000 plots of land. You have walked them around. On every plot of land, you have either put fertilizer or no fertilizer. So fertilizer is blue box, no fertilizer is white box. So now what is happening is all these plots of land have received either fertilizer or no fertilizer. Now what is happening here is the balancing that we were actually trying to have in the laboratory setting was through physical equality. Here we are not looking at whether the two plots of land have the same farmer or they have same exposure to sun or they have the same soil quality. No, we're not trying to do that. What we're trying to do is instead of physical balancing, we are trying to achieve statistical balancing. So what is happening is, on an average, once you randomly allocate these pieces of paper showing fertilizer or no fertilizer, what is happening here is you are basically saying that the bunch of farms which received the fertilizer and the bunch of farms which didn't receive the fertilizer, there is no reason to believe that there is going to be any systematic differences between these two types of land. When I say systematic, it will become slightly more clear when we come to the non-experimental part of the data generating process. But what I mean here is that there is no reason to believe here that more fertile farms would have received fertilizer. Yeah, the probability, the likelihood that the plots of land which are receiving the fertilizer and the plots of land which are not receiving the fertilizer, the probability that they are going to be fertile or less fertile is supposed to be equal. Is supposed to be equal. So it is in that sense, randomization or experimental data generating process gives you a relationship between the yield and the fertilizer. And what is so beautiful here is that we are writing exactly the same equation in the laboratory DGP and also in the experimental DGP. And we will continue to write the same equation as we move along. But what we have to keep in mind is that the data is getting generated through a different process. If the data is getting generated through two different processes, it is not the same data. Even if the numbers are same, still the fact is that one is getting generated through a physical equality of two plots of land, and the other one is not getting generated through physical equality. It is getting generated through statistical equality. So if some of us have exposure to probability distributions, yeah. So if you draw a probability distribution of, let's say, land quality, the probability of probability distribution of land quality will look very similar in the fertilizer group and the non-fertilizer group. So there is a statistical balancing we're talking about. I'll come to the quasi-experimental slightly later. Let me come to the non-experimental first. Now in the non-experimental setting, again, I'm writing the same set of equations. If you see it, there are only few changes here. You would have observed that when we were doing the laboratory work and when we were doing the experimental work, we almost removed the farmer from the choice making scenario. The farmer was not making any decision here because in the first case, the person who is setting up the laboratory, most probably the evaluator herself, she is making things physically equal. In the second case, the experimental data generating process, the evaluator, the randomizer, is making things equal. Where is the farmer? The beneficiary. Yeah. So the beneficiary or the farmer is not deciding whether they want the fertilizer or not. This is a very, very important distinction between experimental and non-experimental settings. Yeah. So I would really request to take note of this one thing is in experimental settings, people or the unit of treatment, households or people at whatever level you're giving the program, they do not decide. They do not decide. So if a program is being placed at the village level, the randomizer randomly allocates the program at the village level. So it is not that the village assemblies or the village organizations are going to determine whether they are going to receive the program or not. It is a randomizer, an evaluator decides that. Yeah. So that's the experimental setting. Whereas in a non-experimental setting, it is the people's choice. People choose whether we want to participate or not participate. And that is the crux of the difference between experimental and non-experimental methods of evaluation. Because the moment you have people choosing to do certain actions, to participate or not participate, we induce a certain type of bias that I will try to share in this slide. So if you look at this system, the blue boxes and the white boxes and everything, how they're connected to yield, there is no difference between the last two slides and this slide. They're exactly the same. They're exactly the same. There's only one difference here, and we have to appreciate that part. Is here now we do not have a randomizer available. So what has probably happened is the story may have gone like this. A new fertilizer was invented, was introduced in the market, let's say 5 years, 6 years ago, maybe a year ago. It was given in the market. It was introduced by the government agencies. The government agencies provided these fertilizer, this new fertilizer to the marketing depot, the input shops. Their farmers from the villages, nearby villages would have come up, bought this fertilizer, and would have applied this on their fields. Now, after a year, the government departments approaches an evaluator and wants to understand the effect of this new fertilizer on the yield. This is precisely the setting which will generate non-experimental data, not the experimental data. This will generate the non-experimental data. Now, what is the difference here from the experimental? As I said, that people are making choices in non-experimental setting. Now, how are they making choices here? When the government made the fertilizer available in the input shops, what are they doing? They're allowing people, the farmers, to choose whether they want to buy this new fertilizer or not. Now, if the fertilizer is being bought by a set of farmers and is not bought by another set of farmers, we cannot think that this is a random phenomenon. It is just happening by chance that some farmers want it, others farmers don't want it. No, there is something systematic which is happening. There is something fundamentally different between these two groups of farmers. Now, the problem is, there are two ways we can look at how these farmers are making choices. The farmers may be making choices based on certain decision criteria, which we can go and record in a survey. Yeah, let's say one of the decisions one of the criteria for deciding whether I would like to apply the fertilizer on my plot of land is actually coming from the fact that whether my land has been not receiving any fertilizer for last 5 years. Fine, that's pretty fine. And I as an evaluator can go on the field and ask this question. And in most of the cases, I'm likely to record this information correctly. And I can include it in my model, and I can get away with that. Now, one of the problem is, if there are certain unknown things which are guiding the farmer's fertilizer decision. So think about it. If the two farmers have gone to the same shop, one of them buys this fertilizer, the other one does not buy the fertilizer. Now, this farmer who has brought this fertilizer back to his home, it's not that he's going to spray this fertilizer in all the plots of land. Most likely, more often than not, he chooses few plots of land to receive the fertilizer. So even within the same farmer, not all plots of land are going to get the fertilizer, or even if they're going to get the fertilizer, they are not going to get the same amount of fertilizer. So it means that it is not a random phenomenon. The farmer is very much aware of a tacit knowledge about his own plot of land, and he's using that tacit knowledge to decide which plot of land should receive the fertilizer, which we as an evaluator are not aware of, which we as an evaluator cannot record it also. Let's say the fact is that the farmer systematically chooses to apply fertilizer in poor quality of land. Whichever plots of land have poorer land quality, they are going to receive the fertilizer. And the land qualities which are slightly better, they're not going to receive this new fertilizer. Fine. So what has happened? I cannot observe the land quality. Land quality is very difficult to measure. It is almost saying, can we measure somebody's anger? We can have an anger index, but we cannot measure anger or compassion. Similarly, quality of a land is not a direct observable like the age of a person. Yeah. So the fact is, it is unobservable. It will come and sit. The quality of the land will come and sit as an unobservable. But the fact is that this unobservable is now influencing your fertilizer decision. Land quality influences whether the farmer will receive the fertilizer or not. So earlier, if you look at the previous slide, here, the way your unobservable was influencing the yield was a direct one. There's only one arrow. Yeah. Now, this direct arrow is still here, but now there's another way your unobservable is influencing the yield. First, it influences fertilizer, and then it influences yield. Now, this kind of muddies up the water a lot. This is a very serious problem in evaluation exercise. This is the common problem which appears in almost all quantitative evaluation designs. What it does is that if systematically lower quality of land has received the fertilizer, yeah, and systematically higher quality of land did not receive the fertilizer. And if we just take a simple average between the yields on fertilizer plots and non-fertilizer plots, if we do a simple difference of this, it will not give me the causal effect of the fertilizer on the yield. It will give me something more convoluted, more confused thing. What it will give me is the effect of the fertilizer plus the land quality. It will give me the effect of the fertilizer plus the land quality. Now, I don't want to know the effect of land quality. The point where we started with, if you remember, we were not concerned about land quality effects on yield. That's a separate problem if we have to solve. What we were trying to solve is that given a typical plot of land, by how much on an average the yield can improve if I were to apply this new fertilizer. What am I getting in return? I'm not only getting the effect of the fertilizer, but there is an added effect of land quality also that I'm estimating. Now, one may think that this is fantastic. I mean, we asked for one thing, we're getting two things. Yeah, but the good news ends here. Problem is that this will come as one big blobby number. That's one number. So let's say the effect of fertilizer, a bag of 25 kilogram bag of fertilizer on an acre of land is corn yields go up by let's say 2 bags. Yeah. Now I don't know that these 2 bags, how much of it is coming because of the fertilizer, the positive effects of the fertilizer, or how much of it is getting influenced because the land quality was poor to start with. Maybe the true effect of the fertilizer was higher. Had it been applied on a good quality land, maybe it was more. So I would never know that to what extent these 2 bags of more yield of the corn is coming because of fertilizer, and how much of these 2 bags of land is coming because of the poor land quality. I have a question here, please, Mr. Gopinath.
No, not a question, Mr. Vivek. Your slide is not changing. It means you are not using any other slides. It is with non-experimental DGP. Thank you.
Okay, is it now happening? Is it moving now? Okay.
Yes, now.
Okay, thank you. So no, so I was trying to focus on this part, that this whole idea of the non-experimental kind of data generating process throws a very huge set of challenge in front of us in terms of kind of segregating the program effect from those factors which influence the decision to participate in a program, and they are everywhere actually. And I'll give you some examples, which some of these we can quickly discuss here, and some of that can be food for thought for later contemplation. So we talked about the fertilizer corn yield system. That's one system we're talking about. Let's think about the education and wages system, or the police force and crime rates, or the participation in self-help groups and savings. Yeah. So just very quickly, education and wages. Now, if I just want to understand that if people were to receive one more year of education, by how much their wage rates will improve, or they will remain the same? Should I invest as a policymaker in education or primary education or not? Let's say that is the big question we're asking. Now, if I just were to find the simple difference between people who took an additional year of education and we subtract from this the wage of that group which did not go for this additional year of education, and we just say that this is the effect of education on wages, would be again same kind of problem is going to happen here. Why? Because similar to the fertilizer system, where the farmer was choosing how much fertilizer to apply, similarly in the education wage system, not everybody is going for the same level of education, because education is still, given everything else the same, is still largely driven by ability, innate ability. So people going for higher education are supposed to have higher levels of innate ability. And even 2 sons in the same family, the family does not invest in the human capital in both the sons or both the daughters equally. They have an innate or a kind of a tacit understanding of knowing the abilities of their offsprings, and they start investing in them over the course of life in a particular manner. So the very fact that ability is influencing the education decision. So if I go back, this ability is something which I don't observe, which is sitting in you. Yeah. And ability influences the fertilizer, the education. So in place of fertilizer, keep education. In place of you, keep ability. And they all have an influence on the yield, which is the wage in our case. So now I do not know that the difference in the wage which I'm observing is because of education, or it is also the ability effect is getting confused. Yeah. So I may get a simple one number, $500 per year of wages went up because of an additional year of education. But I'm not sure that this increase in wages is all due to education, or is it because people who are actually of higher ability to start with? So then the true effect of education is slightly different or slightly lower, because people who are of higher ability are more likely to go for higher education, given everything else the same in the system. So their ability effects are also kicking in. So again, I would be overshooting the education effects. It's a very similar, that's why I'm kind of titling this slide as seemingly unrelated system, but similar evaluation challenges, same evaluation challenge. What is the evaluation challenge? To segregate the education effect from the ability effect. Similarly, participation in self-help groups and savings. It's not that everybody in the village, every woman in the village is keen to participate in the self-help groups, even if the program is open to all to participate. Yeah. Now, if that is the case, that everybody has an equal opportunity to participate in self-help groups, still few of them participate and few don't participate. And there are certain known reasons of why people are participating, and there are certain unknown reasons. If unknown reasons, the unobservables, start influencing the participation decision, yeah, let's say the households who have the culture of providing a space for women's agency to fructify and work in its full bloom. Let's say the household has a rural household in India is more open to women's exercising their agency inside for household decision making. Now, women's agency inside a household is a very tacit knowledge. We can try to measure it through some women empowerment index, but then it's still not observable fully. So what is going to happen? It's kind of going to come here. And again, I want to kind of quickly show you that in place of fertilizer, we have SHG participation. In place of yield, we have savings. In place of U, the unobservable is tolerance towards women's agency inside household. Yeah, that's tacit. And somewhere that innate preference for women exercising their agency is going to influence the household's decision to participate in SHGs. So again, the same problem is happening. We don't know whether the savings rate or the savings of the household has gone up because of the SHGs participation, or to what extent, already the women in such households are more prone to be able to save in a better way. They are better planned. Yeah. So again, the same set of challenges are there. So what I really want all of us to kind of start appreciating that these are very different evaluation systems, but the frequency with which the same set of problems are coming up is remarkably high, that we can almost start believing the fact that in every cause and effect system, we're going to have this kind of problem. Just to put a nomenclature to this relationship between the U and the program, which is fertilizer, it is called self-selection bias problem. Why it is called self-selection bias is because as a participant, I self-select myself into the program, or I select myself away from the program. So it's a self-selection bias. Why this self-selection bias is coming? Because I've been allowed to decide on my own behalf whether I would like to participate or not. This opportunity was not available in experimental and in laboratory settings. Now, if that is the case, then from the programmatic perspective, this is good news, because people who really feel the need for the program benefits to reach them are more likely to participate. As an implementer, I'm very happy that I'm able to target my program. This is good program targeting. But from an evaluator's perspective, this is a bit nightmarish because it leads to self-selection bias. So you can see that there is this regular tension, healthy tension between the implementers and the evaluators. And that tension is not only advisable, it is very important to identify it upfront. So whenever we are going as evaluators in a new system, it's very important to very early on catch on to those dimensions of these tensions where the implementer is actually trying to target the program, but the more you target, the more the selection bias problems increases. So for an evaluator to be cognizant of these interlinkages between the unobservables and the program participation decision is very, very important. And this is one skill which I have seen in successful program evaluators kind of, they can immediately dissect that and identify these interlinkages. All right, so in whether it is experimental setting or non-experimental setting, the basic evaluation problem, as I was sharing, is very similar. So if we pose this very simple question, that what is the true effect of a program? Yeah, in a causal setting, what is the true effect? So let's say alpha is the true effect of the program. Yeah, and I've written a simple equation. If it is bothering us, we can ignore that. That's completely fine. But just for people who are interested in these notations, and we all can easily follow that. If we look at this, alpha is the true effect of any program. Y1, I've written here, is outcome if a person participates. Yeah, and please understand that this equation, this relationship, I'm just writing for one person. There's no second person here. We will blow it up to the entire sample later on. But let's think about what is the true effect of a program on one person who has participated. Yeah, this is the effect of a program on a person who has participated. So Y1 is the outcome if a person is participating. Yeah, Y0 is the outcome if that person does not participate. Yeah, P is equal to 1, it just says I'm participating, and P is equal to 0, it tells I did not participate. So P is my identity. P is my identity. Y is my outcome. So we can have two outcomes in two states. One is if I participate, what is my outcome? And the other one is if I don't participate, what is my outcome? So Y1 and Y0 compares that. Yeah. And P is my identity. What is my identity? I'm a participant or I am not a participant. So that's a simple, these are simple notations that would help us to lay down the simple formula for the true causal effect of a program. Now, what we are saying here is that let there be a person. Yes, Mr. Ramnaike, please.
Thank you very much for the time and your idea. I have one question, because you are just mentioned Y1 and Y0 is outcome. Then alpha is a causal effect. The causal effect should be then impact.
Yes,
in this program.
on one person, yeah.
Then my question is, can we evaluate two impacts in the one program?
Sorry, can we?
Can we evaluate two impacts in the one program?
So what I'm understanding is you're saying, can we do the evaluation of two programs in one exercise?
No. Can we evaluate two impacts?
You mean two outcomes?
In one program?
Sure. You're saying there are more than one outcome from a program. Let's say, education can give you wages. It can also give you, let's say, wealth. Is that?
I'm trying to evaluate using the DAC formula, because the DAC is based on the outcome is affected for improving the impact of the program.
Indeed, yeah.
Then one is the outcome and Y0 is also outcome.
Yeah.
According to formula,
okay.
should be in an impact.
Very nice.
Now you just mentioned at least there was a two impact in this formula. My question is, can we evaluate two impact in the one program?
Yes, I'm glad you picked it up so early. I was just coming on that. I will be definitely focusing on that for sure. You will have the reply when I finish this slide.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. So the question that I'm posing here is actually a purist question. If I want to find the true effect of a program, what should I know? Yeah, true means in the purest sense of the term. Yeah. So the true effect, and once we are done with these notations, let's try to understand what is this. Can you see my cursor? I'm just not sure if wherever I'm putting the cursor, is it visible?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So when look at this part of this equation, it is saying what is my outcome? Who am I? I am a participant. This is my identity. P is equal to 1. If I participate, so my identity is I'm a participant, and I'm saying I'm a participant, and if I participate, my outcome is Y1. Yeah. Now the fact is that I am a participant, so I will participate. So there is no distinction, there is no duality between who I am and what I do. I'm a participant and I participate. So I can see this outcome Y1. I can go and do a survey of all the beneficiaries, ask them about your outcomes. That number will come and fit in here very easily. That's not a problem. Yeah, I'm a participant and I participate, so this is my outcome. Minus, I'm a participant, but what would have been my outcome had I not participated? Who am I? I'm a participant. But the kind of outcome I'm looking at is what would have been my outcome had I not participated. The fact is that I'm a participant who participated, and that is why this is called factual. You can see that here. This is factual. This part of the equation is factual. Fact is I'm a participant, I participated. Minus, I'm a participant, but then I'm asking this very thought-provoking question, is that what would have happened had I not participated? That's counter to the fact. That is counterfactual. It does not exist. And that is why one of the colleagues asked the question that can we estimate both of these together or not? Well, we are taking a step below. Before that, let me try to picturize it for all of us. What do we mean when we say factual and counterfactual? So think about it. Here I am, I'm a beneficiary of a program. I'm sitting here before the program has even started. I'm in year 0. You are an evaluator. You come to me and ask me my socioeconomic conditions and all the indicators of outcomes that are associated with the program that you're evaluating. Let's say you ask me all these questions. Fine. Then you record your data and you have gone. It's a baseline data. Yeah. And then let's say this program is there for 5 years. For 5 years, we both don't meet each other. We keep on traversing in time. After 5 years, you have again appeared. And you ask me again, what is the outcome for you? Yeah. You record that information after 5 years, and that information, let's say income. My income after 5 years is, let's say, 10,000 rupees. So you write 10,000 in place of this because I'm a participant and I participated. Okay. Now, how do I generate this? The only way I can generate this number as of now is to sit in a time machine. And when I am in the 5th year, I sit in the time machine, I come back 5 years in the past, and I come to the baseline scenario again. Yeah. Who am I? I am the participant. But this time, I choose not to participate and I move in time again. And I again traverse my 5 years. You again appear as an evaluator and ask me, how much is your income? So last time I said 10,000 because I had participated. This time what is happening is I was a participant, but I didn't participate. And because of that, my income is 8,000. So then it is 10,000 minus 8,000, which is 2,000. Yeah. So that is fact, that is counterfact. Why it is counterfact? Because once I'm a participant, I cannot exist in the 2 stages, in the 2 states. There are, for us, there is only one state of existence. I can either exist as a participant or I can exist as a non-participant. So when I am a participant, I mean, good news that time machines are still not invented. Otherwise, the whole evaluation question would have been solved very easily. Actually, there is no evaluation problem to start with, actually. So the simple impact evaluation formula is actually a difference between fact minus counterfact. That's what I'm trying to impress upon. Now, you have rightfully guessed that we don't observe the counterfactual. We can only observe one of the outcomes. We don't observe both the outcomes. Yeah, we can only observe the facts. We cannot observe the counterfacts. So then, if we cannot observe the counterfactual, then it also implies that actually the impact evaluation or program evaluation can also be seen as solving a missing data problem. What is missing? This part of the equation is missing. I just don't know. Because the counterfactual is missing, I don't know what would have happened to me had I not participated. The time machines are still not around. Yeah. So it means that impact evaluation in a causal framework is actually solving a missing data problem. Why missing? The right hand side equation part of the equation is missing, is completely missing. I can even go to the extent of saying that all the tools that have come up in last 15 years or 20 years or so in the evaluation literature are only solving this missing data problem. Yeah. Now think about it. I mean, and the COVID has really taught even common men about clinical trials. And we always think about there are people who are receiving drugs and people who are not receiving a drug or a vaccine or no vaccine. What is this no vaccine trying to do? What is the group of this no vaccine people trying to do? They're only trying to estimate the counterfactual because it's a missing data. So you have to guess it. And all the sophistication, all the innovations, even recent Nobel Prizes have been given in economics. The last year, the last to last year, and last to last year are starting from the RCT revolution to the work that was done in the field of health, and now recently for natural experiments is being done to solve this missing data problem at one level. Yeah. So from that perspective, I can say that program evaluation is a missing data problem. And since it's a missing data, so I have to guess it. The estimate of the counterfactual is called control group. So when we think about treatment and control, the basic, why do I need a control or a comparison group is because we cannot observe the counterfactual. That is very important to kind of keep in mind. I had a question, why P is equal to 1 if the person has not participated? I think I have already now addressed this because P is my identity. So my identity is that of a participant. I cannot change it. And that's why it is called a counterfactual. If I change my identity, then it's not a counterfactual. I can go to a non-participant and I can ask about his or her income. So then yes, with and without the intervention. Yes. So that kind of addresses that kind of concern. Yeah. All right. So then what is the challenge in program evaluation? To have a valid estimate of the counterfactual. Can I guess it in an appropriate manner? And from one system to another, we are only solving this missing data problem, actually. All right. So then we need to think about what is a valid comparison group. What does it mean in terms of the program evaluation exercise? The basic idea about a treatment group is very clear. A group which has received the program benefits. The comparison group is a group which has not received the program benefits. But it's not that anybody who has not received the program benefit is a comparison group. I'll give you a very extreme example just to drive the point. There is a very large scale program in India to generate rural employment. Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, MGNREGA. It was started as a scheme and became an act. It kind of ensures 100 days of rural employment to all people who are willing to enroll in this program. Now that's your treatment group. Now, if we are not careful in identifying which is a comparison group, then it can anybody who is not participating in NREGA, MG NREGA, if that is our definition of comparison group, then even people sitting in other countries who are not participating in MG NREGA would also become part of the comparison group. So unless and until we enforce a disciplined structure on the comparison group, we cannot say it's a valid comparison group. Just to again re-emphasize that we are trying to find a comparison group in order to estimate the missing data, which is the counterfactual. And that's why it's very important to understand what is the valid comparison group. So first of all, the both treatment and comparison groups are eligible to receive the program benefits. So we cannot go outside the boundary of the program benefits and start comparing things, because in one case, the benefits are just not available. So, or they're not eligible. Both two populations are not eligible. So we cannot just say that just because they're not participating, so they become comparison group. They must be eligible to receive the program benefits. They may not be getting it, but their eligibility is there. That's the first. They're very similar in the absence of the program. You remember we were exploring early on the laboratory setting, the experimental setting, and we were talking about balancing. This is the balancing assumption, which is coming up again. They should react similarly to the program, because if they are very similar in the absence of the program, they should be very similar in the presence of the program also. So it goes without saying, it's a kind of a corollary to the first assumption. Also, it should not be the case that the treatment group and the comparison group have different levels of exposure to other interventions, because then other programs are going to interfere in our estimates of this program evaluation. So if that is the case, then we have to be very careful in terms of recording information about these other programs. And that is actually becoming a very, very significant reality, because almost every program in India, I can say for sure, is targeting a very novel concept called convergence. What is happening under convergence? I've been looking at the evaluation, the national evaluation for National Rural Livelihoods Mission for the last 5 years. In 16 and 21, we just ended up kind of a micro survey of a panel of households. A very big emphasis, a significant emphasis of the program design is that SHG women should be able to receive benefits from all the programs that are available in the rural setting. So one of the pillars of NRLM, this Rural Livelihood Mission program, is to make them aware of not only about these other programs, but also make them aware and handhold them to receive the benefits from other programs. In fact, if I were to share with you that the NRLM women have received almost 9,500 rupees more from NREGS annually than non-NRLM women. I mean, that's a very typical case of these two groups who can be differentially exposed. The NRLM group being more exposed to NREGA, and the non-NRLM group is less exposed to NREGA. And that can wreak havoc as far as my evaluation estimates are concerned. So I have to be very careful that if one of them is more exposed, I must measure the extent of exposure. That's very important. Moving on. Okay, so we are in this whole arena of the valid comparison groups. I'll just take a minute of a voice break, and I'll come back sharply after a minute. I just need a voice break of a minute, if that's okay. All right, thanks a lot. Before going to this part of the discussion, if I would like to take few questions, if there are any questions till now. All right, very nice. So we were trying to understand and kind of develop good estimates of the missing data, which is the counterfactual. So in order to replace, because we have to completely fill in that formula, factual minus counterfactual. So for counterfactual, we have to fill in that formula with good estimates of the counterfactual. One of the potential candidates for an estimate of the counterfactual, and a lot of us use that in many cases, is a with and without comparison. What is a with and without comparison? We're basically saying that there is a treatment group and then there is a non-participating group. I'm not calling them as comparison group knowingly, because comparison group means they're comparable. Unless and until a group is comparable, we can only call them as non-participating if they're not participating. We cannot call them as comparison. Comparison means they are valid comparison group. So let's say the with group means treatment group and the without group is a non-participating group. Yeah, whether they are comparison group or not is something is for us to analyze, debate, and decide whether they are a good candidate for the estimate of the counterfactual or not. So that's what we want to look here, that what kind of questions we need to pose if we were to work with a with and without type of program evaluation design. Okay, so think about this. The gray dots are about the participants and the white dots are about the non-participants. Let's fix that first. The white bubbles are for the non-participants and the gray bubble is for the participant. Okay, so I'm here, this is baseline. Yeah, and the baseline, my participant group has some level of outcome, some income, which is Y0. Yeah, before the program started, I, as an evaluator, went and surveyed everybody. When I surveyed, I found that yes, can you, Beverly, can you just kind of explain this question a bit more for me to be able to fully come back to you on this? Would you like to reiterate what you're trying to say?
All right, thank you. I'm just imagining, like, for example, I understand that the example that you're using by of a fertilizer, say, for example, we capacitate members of parliament and expect them maybe that they're going to be, maybe to enhance their confidence level so that they're able to debate in the House. But you find that in some cases, the ones that would have capacitated are the ones who will be quiet, and the ones who have not been trained are the ones who are actually pushing for, maybe for issues to happen. So in that case, I'm just wondering.
Yeah, no, it is indeed. I mean, there are several vocational training evaluations which has happened. And yes, I mean, programs which are more on, let's say, the learning part rather than, let's say, providing them with school bags or providing them with certain hardware items. The programs which have the advisory component is very high are definitely far more complex to evaluate, but a very similar framework can be used to evaluate such programs as well. Completely agree with that. In fact, I can share some resources for evaluating similar types of programs. Yeah, I'll share with the APIA group. Yeah. Thank you. All right, so coming back, this is the outcome, the income for the participating group. Yeah, and let's say this is a participant. So what has happened after 5 years, the person is landing here and they are participating. So they move from Y0 to Y4. So that's the new outcome after the program is ended. Yeah, Y0 to Y4. Now there is a non-participating group. The income of that group at baseline was Y1. Yeah, and during the course of the program, they did not participate. but they were still doing other stuff and activities. And they moved from Y1, the incomes increased to Y3. Yeah. Now, if I were to do a simple with without type of program evaluation, what would be the impact of the program? It's a simple question. That would be what? With is Y4, without is Y3. I observe these two things. I say Y4 minus Y3 is the true impact of the program. Now that's slightly problematic because the fact is these two groups were very different to start with. The non-participating group had a higher income when they started as compared to the participating group, which had a lower income. And we can know it from this point is that if I were to ask this question, what would have happened to the participating group had they not participated? Their counterfactual income is here, which is Y2. So the true impact of the program is factual minus counterfactual. And you can see that if you do a simple lumpy with without, it will underestimate the true effect of the program. The with and without, what I'm trying to impress upon is that we can use with without, but we have to be aware of the kind of assumptions we are making. What is the assumption we are making? Assumption we are making is that this difference of Y1 and Y0 is not a significant difference, is not significant. It is not a huge difference. If that is not a huge difference, then my control group is a good estimate of the counterfactual. Then I can say, yes, my treatment group, if there was no program, it would have ended here at Y3. And now it has ended at Y4. So Y4 minus Y3 is a good estimate of the program effect. But if I believe that this is a major difference, this is a major difference, then in that case, I have to be careful about understanding or picking those sets of individuals from the non-participating group who are very similar with this participating group before the program started. Yeah. All right. Very nice. So this is one. The other one is the before after. We do it a lot. The before after comparisons. Again, what we are trying to kind of get to a sense of is what are the assumptions that we are working under. So we can use any of these methods. We can use any of these regression frameworks if we are exposed to regression analysis. But then we have to also, no technical method or no toolbox in impact evaluation is free from assumptions. Assumptions are always there. Whether the assumptions are very weak or they're very strong is something that can help us to understand whether we want to get with a particular toolbox or not. So if we do a with without, which is kind of very fascinating, because if you remember, we said that whom should I compare me? I said, let's compare me with myself. One time I have the program, one time I don't have the program. Yeah. So a natural argument can be, why don't I compare me with myself before and after? That will actually, at least I'm comparing with myself. Yeah. Okay. So we just looking at the before and after. The before is the before of the same person on whom the program has been given to. So there is no control group here. It is the beneficiary, and we are comparing the before and after of the same beneficiary. So in that sense, it is far more sophisticated than with and without in terms of meeting the requirements. Let's see what is the assumption we are making here. So this is a gray group. There is no white group here. Gray is participants. So I'm the gray group. My income is Y0. This is before the program. And then I participate in the program and my incomes move up. So I'm moving from Y0 to Y2. Yeah. So what is the impact of the program? Y2, which is after, minus before, which is Y0. Y2 minus Y0 is the before after kind of evaluation design. Now, what is the big assumption I'm making here? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The before after is mostly done in non-experimental setting. Quasi-experiments are more for natural experiments. I'll come to the natural experiments also very soon. But yeah, this is more for the non-experimental kind of setting that we're doing in. So the assumption that I'm making here is that when I'm moving from here to here, so what am I saying? That this Y0 is the estimate of the counterfactual, because if there was no program, what would have been my income? Y0. So Y2 minus Y0, Y2 is factual minus Y0. Y0 is counterfactual, which is the estimate. So the assumption I'm making is if I had not participated in program, my incomes would have not moved in any which way possible. So I am negating any type of increase in income of myself had there been no program, which is kind of difficult to prove. But once in a while, we have seen program evaluations happening where either data requirements or the program theory of change actually supports a before and after design. I'll give a quick example of the before after design. We were doing some work for rehabilitating the commercial sex workers in Maharashtra and Uttar Pradesh, two of the largest states in India. Now, this was a joint liability group program, kind of the interloaning facility was provided, and these women were kind of incentivized to leave the commercial sex workers profession, and they were trying to mainstream them in their nearing neighborhoods. The problem here is that getting the baseline data for those commercial sex workers who did not participate in the program was not an easy task, and the data was completely missing. So the data requirements were such that you cannot have a baseline data on the comparison group. The comparison group will comprise of those commercial sex workers who did not participate in the program. We didn't have the data on that. But the good news here was that literally, and even the national survey showed that the savings, which was one of the outcomes, the savings rate of the commercial sex workers in India have largely remained unchanged in the last 8 to 9 years, the savings rate. So it was easy for us to kind of impress upon the policymakers is that in the absence of the program, the saving rates of these women who got rehabilitated would have not changed. So in that sense, the assumption that I am a good estimate of my own counterfactual before the program is rather more valid than in many other scenarios that we have seen. So before and after, or with or without, are kind of very often used. There are simple regressions people run. When you run a simple regression where you regress an outcome on program, the dummy variable, and a set of covariates, it's a with without regression. It's basically a with without evaluation design. And sometimes you have this panel data on a set of beneficiaries whom you have gone and prepared a baseline, and then you have gone and tracked them the same. So there's a before after comparison with a time effect. That is also possible. Yeah, this is, I'm not going to provide the answer here. This is something after the workshop, I can supply the answers here. There's some questions, an exercise based on what we have just discussed over here. All right, I'm going to kind of delve a bit into one of the most often used methods of program evaluation in non-experimental setting. Why I'm focusing a lot more on non-experimental setting, but because at least from the Indian perspective, and a lot more developing countries' perspective, the availability of experimental data is still in a very nascent stage. Almost 85 to 90% of the times, what we're finding is we have collected a lot of non-experimental data. We have a lot of this administrative data, we have MIS, we have survey data, but all of it is being collected in a non-experimental setting, which means after the program has been rolled out, people have decided whether they want to participate or not, and then an evaluation exercise has been commissioned. That is the point in time when the evaluations, most of the evaluations are still happening in this part of the world. So coming back to these matching based comparison groups, to start with, this is matching comes in the category of with and without, where you're comparing treatment group outcomes with comparison group outcomes. But then it is a more precise approach to with without. The idea here is not everybody is a good match. Then I need to understand what is a good match. And this whole idea of developing good matches. So let's say there are 500 people in my beneficiary group, and there are, let's say another 500 people in my non-beneficiary group. The idea here is that not everybody in the non-beneficiary group is a good match for people in the beneficiary group. So what I do literally is that I pick up one of the persons from 500 beneficiaries. I pick this up person. I write an algorithm, a procedure to find out a good match for this person in the non-beneficiary group. And I compare them. I compare these two people. So I take out every individual one by one, from 1 to 500 from beneficiary, try to find a match for that one person. Yeah. If I find a match, I compare them and I record it somewhere. So maybe out of 500, I can find a good match, and I'm keeping the good match in quotes right now. If I can find a good match, then let's say for 400. So I cannot use data on 100 beneficiaries because I didn't find a good match for them. Yeah. Once again, what is a match? Why am I trying to find a good match? Because I'm trying to estimate a counterfactual. What is the counterfactual? A counterfactual is something what would have happened to me had I not participated. Why I'm concerned about it? Because the very fact that I'm participating or I'm not participating, there are different reasons which can influence my participation decision. So when I say I want to find a good match, I'm trying to say is that these two sets of people who have been matched are very similar in the absence of the program. And if the program is given to both, they are equally likely to participate. Not only that, they are equally likely to get benefited also, because they were very similar to start with. So that's a good match. We're not trying to find a perfect clone here. We are trying to find a statistical clone of each other. And that's what the matching based methods are kind of used for in terms of understanding these good matches. So I have kind of covered both the points. What's the counterfactual once again, and what we need to do in terms of estimating the true effect of a program. Now, there are two broad ways of matching. One is a direct matching. It's a very, very simple exercise I'm just trying to read one question that has come. Since a lot relies on assumptions, what possibilities we can employ to avoid situation can turn into a possible risk for a program, and with some evident deviance in the assumption, how likely is the impact going to be influenced? Yes. Sure. So, I mean, the fact is that, yes, all of these methods are exposed to a set of assumptions that we are working with. The idea is the possibility of those assumptions to materialize. So one way is that we can overlook these assumptions and not account them before we start our evaluation work. And the other one is we do these scoping field visits to understand the possible risks and assumptions that we are making around the evaluation design. And a lot of these problems can be solved at the level of survey stage itself. So we are going to implement a primary data survey. A lot of these variables that can influence the design are captured right there in the survey. And whatever is left, a huge portion of that can be addressed with the proper evaluation tool that we can use. In fact, at the end of this part of the workshop, I'll take you through the evaluation decision that we make depending upon the type of assumptions we're making. So there is a decision tree that I'll quickly expose you to. Yeah. All right. So coming back to direct matching. Direct matching, as the name applies, it tries to prepare a good match. I mean, there are quite a few participants from India who can relate with this example. I just try to, this is a traditional marriage type of example. In slightly earlier days, the matchmaking used to be the bride's and the groom's family main occupation. And it would be based on an astrological chart. And there were 32 dimensions based on which there used to be a match of a good bride and the groom. And the idea was that if we can match them on large number of qualities, these were qualities of these two individuals. So the idea was to check their compatibility. If they're compatible, then they should be encouraged to marry each other. Matching is something like that. We are trying to have these various dimensions on which the treatment and the comparison group units are very similar. And if we can have a good match on large number of dimensions, a large number of factors, then we can say that not only it's a good match, even the strength of the match is also very high. So just to kind of keep that in mind as we go along with the direct matching discussion over here. It's very simple in one sense. The direct matching is basically it matches participants and non-participants using some characteristics. So the algorithm is written very simply. I'm not getting into the coding and those kind of things in this workshop because of, I think a lot of us have access to the tech part, but I think the intuition behind it is what I'm trying to share more here. And if you're interested, I can share the technical links for further self-exploration. It can be done. Yeah. So coming back to direct matching, the idea is very simple. Take a subject A who is enrolled, which means it's a beneficiary. Look for the other subject and look for the other subject who is almost identical to subject A, which is the comparison group. Yeah. All right. Now, subject B is our proxy of the counterfactual. Yeah. So we are trying to have a good estimate of the counterfactual. Yeah. We have one person who is participating and the other person who is not participating. And we are basically trying to match them on certain characteristics. Let's see how do we match them. So let's go to the next slide over here. Yeah. This is simple mechanics of matching. These are 8 individuals from 1 to 8. The first 4 individuals are not participating and the last 4 individuals are participating. The 0 and 1 tells you whether they are participating or not. Education is the criteria based on which I'm trying to match. Yeah. If they have similar education or same education, we are assuming that they are good match. You can contradict this, but right now for the sake of simplicity, we have taken only one dimension of matching. Yeah. And then we have these outcomes, their incomes. Yeah. So if I were to find a good match of this first person who is a participant and ID is 5, a good match of this person with 5 years of education is the ID 3. Yeah. Who also has the same 5 years of education. So what I do is I compare their outcomes 100 minus 90. So you can see it on the next slide. For this 5th person, a good match is the third person ID because they have the same education level. See the education IDs. They have the same levels of education. What I do is I compare their outcomes 100 minus 90, which is 10. Yeah. This is a simple algorithm that we can write and we can repeat it for everybody. So I can go to the next person, 6th person, education is 3. And then I have to go back to the comparison group and find somebody who has an education of 3, and I find it for the 2nd person here. Yeah. So for the 6th ID, a good comparison is ID 2. Yeah, this is ID 2. So what I do is I compare their incomes. 80 is the income of the 6th ID, and 80 is again the income of the 2nd ID. So the effect on this person is 0. Yeah. Now what I do is I had 4 beneficiaries and 4 non-beneficiaries. So what I do is I repeat this exercise 4 times and I find these differences 10, 0, 5, 10. And then what I do is I just divide it by 4 because I have to find an average. We have to find an average treatment effect. So what I do is I add 10, 0, 5, 10 divided by 4 beneficiaries. Yeah, because it's the effect on the beneficiaries, not the effect on the non-beneficiaries, the effect on the beneficiaries. Otherwise, we would have divided it by 8, not 4. There are 4 beneficiaries. So we divide that and we said that 6.25 rupees or your local currency, the incomes increased by 6.25 units on an average. Yeah, so that's a simple mechanics of matching. Now the problem is there is a curse of dimensionality. You may very quickly would have realized by this time that we are saying that if the education levels of two person is same, they are good match. Now that's highly susceptible. I mean, it's nowhere it's written that if people have same education, they cannot be different in other ways. They can be different in other ways. And because they are different in so many other ways, they may not be good match. So let's complicate the example a bit. The idea here is we want to find a good match. So if I want to find good match, it means that they have to be similar on large number of characteristics. Yeah. So the moment I increase this number of characteristics, that means I'm increasing the dimensions of matching. So let's say I want to find a good match of this micro enterprise owner. She's a woman who is separated, has two sons, a Filipino in the northern Philippines, and having a micro enterprise. So you have these various characteristics of this individual on the basis of a gender, age, marital status, employment, and so on and so forth. Try finding a perfect match for her. Almost impossible to find a perfect match. If somebody is of the same ancestry, similar marital status, they may have the same age but may differ on other accounts. So finding a perfect match, direct match, is very difficult. What is the curse of dimensionality here? On one hand, we are saying if you have to find a good match, you must match them on large number of items. Yeah. And on the other hand, once you increase the number of items, you stop finding a match actually. That's the curse of dimensionality. You can see here, there is no match for this, the woman who is 34 years age, she is married, self-employed in family enterprise, complete elementary school, have two children, spouse is unemployed, 35 years of age, his education, and then other characteristics. Finding a perfect match for her is almost next to impossible. So this is the curse of dimensionality. The matching algorithms that are now being used solve this problem with the help of what is called propensity score matching. Propensity score matching. Rather than using direct matching, it is better to use propensity score matching. So what is the idea of propensity score matching? It's very simple. It's saying that there are two individuals. Even in the matchmaking example I was giving you from the Indian marriage scenario, they were not trying to find perfect clones of each other. What they were trying to find was whether these two people can live happily after the marriage. So those qualities were considered which influence the compatibility of the two individuals in the post-marriage world. So it is not that they have to be similarly educated. If education has nothing to do with compatibility, then education was not a criteria. Yes, indeed, Asmita, yes. The comparison groups are constructed with the existing, the secondary databases sometimes can do that. But yeah, so if the secondary databases exist, then you have to find the criteria for finding those. It is theoretically possible, but it's difficult. So more often than not, the comparison groups are constructed from primary data sets. But yes, there are examples where administrative data has also been used to construct the comparison groups. Yes, indeed. So coming back, we are trying to find the good match to lead a good life later on. Similarly, when it comes to program evaluation, we have to also ask which factors should I be concerned about? Are all the factors that define an individual, or only those factors which influence somebody's decision to participate in the program? Since we are doing program evaluation, since we are concerned with the basic problem of counterfactual, and why the counterfactual is important, because we want to find out what would have happened had this person not participated. So the participation in the program, if this is what I want to find out, then I would like to find matches in comparison and treatment group based on all those factors which can influence the program participation decision. So if I know that if this is a farmers school program where farmers are brought in and they're taught certain ideas of cultivation and marketing and how to work with farmer producer organizations, so on and so forth, you would immediately come up with variables which are going to influence the farmer's decision to participate. More likely or not, we have seen in farmer field schools, farmers in the age group of 25 to 40 are more likely to participate. Farmers of slightly higher education are more likely to participate. Farmers with access to internet are less likely to participate. Yeah, because they have access to other farmer field schools. They would not like to invest programs, invest their time in this farmer field school. So certain factors influence positively, certain factors influence inversely, negatively. But we have to have all of these to develop a measure of the probability that a person will participate. So what we do here is we run a model called logistic model or a probit model. Again, the book that I will share with you, it's freely downloadable, kind of takes you through all these methods in great detail with proper codes and data sets also. So what the idea here is that, and it has a description on logistic regressions as well. What it does is that it estimates or guesses a probability that a person in your sample will participate or not. And how do you estimate this probability? You use all the factors which influences a particular person's decision to participate. That's the first thing. Because I'm trying to match on their likelihood to participate. So I need to have a measure. Now we know that probability is a number between 0 and 1. We all know that it cannot be a number less than 0 and more than 1. So it has to be somewhere between 0 and 1. Now what has happened is that all of a sudden, with the use of propensity score matching, the propensity score is the probability to participate, and which is the number between 0 and 1. I can use any number of dimensions to match, but I have been able to collapse it to one number of probability called propensity score matching. So when I was trying to do direct matching, I have to match them on large number of dimensions. But what I have done is I have collapsed all of these and brought them together and just called it as propensity score. Yeah. So what has happened is I have reduced the curse of dimensionality to a single number, and now this single number, although there are infinite numbers between 0 and 1, so in that sense, it is a bit complex process, but at least I have one number, and I need to find if somebody's probability to participate is 50%, and there is another person whose probability to participate in the control group is also 50%, then technically I can say they are very good matches. That is the idea I'm working with. If two people's probability to participate in the program is very similar, I'm not using the term same because same is not possible here. Similar would be possible. Is similar, they are good matches. Compare their outcomes. Pick out every person one by one with their probabilities. Compare them with a person in the control group with a very similar probability. Compare their outcomes. Write it down. A similar exercise that we have done here. We are comparing 190 for people for fifth with the third person. Yeah. How did we find? Based on education. Now you replace this education with a number called propensity score. You just replace it with propensity score. The propensity score is derived through a logic model, which, as I said, I'll share the resource with you. Yeah. So now again I'm in the realm of covariate or direct matching. So I start from direct matching. I had this curse of dimensionality. I moved into propensity score matching. Now, because I'm using propensity scores, which is just one single number, I'm back into the realm of direct matching because I just have one number to match upon. But this one number is coming from large number of variables that have influenced somebody's probability to participate. So this one number is actually accumulating the information contained in those variables, large number of variables. So it is not just one number. It is basically a decision-making process, which I am capturing through a logic model. All right. I've just explained these to you already. coming to this slide, I mean, the step one is something which is coming from a logic model that we just discussed. So now where are we standing? We are standing, let's say we have run this logic model and we know the probability to participate for everybody. Now the question is, I've been using this term good match, or I've been using this term, they have similar probability. So how should I think about what is a good match now in the realm of propensity score matching? I'll give you a simple example. There are various algorithms. The algorithm basically helps the computer, the program, the software to execute the job that I wanted to repeat many times for everybody. So again, let's say we have 500 people in the beneficiary group, 500 people in the non-beneficiary group. I pick up the first person from the beneficiary group and I have a propensity score for this person, let's say 0.73. 0.73. I put this person on a number scale. Yeah, from 0 to 1, I can locate him at 0.73. Now on this number scale, I will place all the non-beneficiaries with their probabilities. I will place them. Somebody with 0.01, 0.001, 0.8, 0.6, whatever it is. But my focus is on that 0.73 because I'm trying to find a match for that beneficiary. So what I do is I have this beneficiary with a propensity score of 0.73. I try to find a non-beneficiary whose propensity score is closest. And I call that non-beneficiary as my nearest neighbor. Once I have the nearest neighbor for everybody, I match them, I compare their outcomes, and I write the difference, and I take their average difference, just like we have done before. This is called your nearest neighbor. There is a problem with the nearest neighbor. The problem with the nearest neighbor is that the nearest neighbor may not be very near. I'll give an example. With this 0.73 person, this beneficiary, it is possible that the nearest neighbor is actually 0.4. Now, this person who is the beneficiary, her probability to participate is 73%. And the nearest non-beneficiary, her probability to participate is 49%. No, 73 and 49 are miles apart. Even though mathematically they are nearest, but I know from my own field visits and my own knowledge about the program, they're not comparable. So now I need to put a discipline on defining which is the nearest. That I do next. So what I do is I use a radius matching. Instead of using nearest, I can use a radius. What is radius? We all know what is radius. It is basically saying that in the circumference, within a circumference, within a boundary, if anybody is coming up, then only I'll call it as a my good neighbor. So for this 0.73 person, I can say my radius is 0.1. What does it mean? It means that if there is a non-beneficiary who is within this boundary of plus minus 0.1, so 0.73 plus 0.1 is 0.83. And 0.73 minus 0.1 is 0.63. So if there is any non-beneficiary in this bandwidth of 0.63 to 0.83, only then I will consider it to be a good match. So automatically you will see now that 0.49, the 49% individual is chucked out. It cannot be. And if there is nobody, then I don't find a good match for this person. I drop it from the sample. That is fine. That is fine. Caliper matching is actually a combination of nearest and radius. So I said 0.63, 0.83. There may be many people in that bandwidth and many non-beneficiary. What I do is I pick the nearest person in that radius and I call it as a caliper. We would have all used the vernier caliper in our secondary education. The concept is still the same. It is the nearest person in a radius. So there may be 10 non-beneficiaries who are in the bandwidth of 0.63 and 0.83. I pick the nearest in that. So likewise, there are many algorithms that we can use. The good thing here is you can see that there is no indiscriminate matching over here. A lot of indiscriminate matching happens if we just do a bit without. We are still doing a bit without, but with precise matching algorithms, it becomes a very, very exciting and very, very, I would say, a lot more scientific exercise to engage in, rather than just indiscriminately matching any beneficiary with any non-beneficiary, which is kind of counterproductive. So if I were to say that which is one method that I should pick up as a development consultant or as a program evaluator for me to do most of my evaluation exercises, I mean, for the next 4 or 5 years, my guess is like almost 85 to 90% of all evaluation in the developing country context is still relying on matching algorithms, is still relying on matching methods. So I think this is one method to pick up as far as the non-experimental methods are concerned. I'll try to wind up my discussion with a kind of a decision tree. I've just tried to put it for understanding the kind of evaluation decision that I need to make. The basic question that I need to ask as an evaluator is, can I randomize? Which means what? Can I decide on people's behalf that who would participate and who would not? More often than not, it's not going to be the case because of A, the agencies who are implementing the program would not like to part away with that decision-making power, strength to locate the program because they understand the area so well. So they would not like to just throw some dollars based on a randomized process. So you would find it difficult to find a strategic partner who's willing to participate in a randomized process. More often than not, there are ethical concerns that we are all aware of. But if you can do that, if you can randomize, then the simple answer to your evaluation design is use randomized controlled trials. That's very simple to start with. But if the answer is no, then you have to ask the next question, that do you have a valid baseline data? And the emphasis is on valid. More often than not, what I've experienced in my personal capacity as an evaluator is that we do have baseline data on the beneficiaries. Many organizations who engage in scientific evaluations have baseline data on beneficiaries, but they have almost no data on non-beneficiaries. Okay, yeah, the very interesting question. Just want to kind of quickly say that. What if you have more than one participants and non-participants with same or close values? This fantastic question, because in the propensity score matching algorithm setup, what we do is that if there are more than one non-participant who is a good match of participant, we take the difference of the participant with the non-participant 2 times. Yeah, of their outcomes 2 times, and we include it in the part of our when we compute the average. So if there are 2 person who is a good match for me, I'll include it 2 times, compute 2 different average effects for the same person. That's completely within what we do actually. A valid baseline data is one where you have the baseline and endline data available not only for the beneficiary group, but also for the non-beneficiary group. So if you just have the baseline data and endline data available for the beneficiary group, you are landing into a zone of before and after kind of evaluation design. And we know what kind of assumption we are making here. It's a tough call, but that's what we are getting into. If you don't have a valid baseline data, the next question is there a policy cutoff? I didn't want to get into this, slightly more on a technical side type of discussion on policy cutoffs. But the intuition we all have already. You would find that a lot of these interventions are given on certain criteria. The agencies which compute poverty score, what evaluators do or what implementers do, they go and they basically have a laundry list of questions before they give the program. Do you have a bicycle? Do you have a transistor? Do you have a plot of land? And so on and so forth. And then a poverty score is computed. If somebody's poverty score is very high, that means the person is very poor. They're more likely to receive the program. And somebody's poverty score is very low, that means they're less poor, then there is less likelihood to receive the program. There is a policy cutoff, which means that let's say if somebody poverty score is 50 or more, then they can receive the program. And somebody whose poverty score is less than 50, they're not going to receive the program. If that kind of data is available for you, then what you can do is you can think about it. Individuals who had a poverty score of 49, they did not receive the program, yeah, because they're less than 50. But individuals who have a poverty score of, let's say, 51, they receive the program because their score is more than 50. I'm sure you can easily argue that this 49 and 51 are not remarkably different. This 49 and 51 can happen to a large number of other factors. One thing is they're really 49 and 51, but more often than not, it can also happen just because of the way we are observing their assets. You know, a bicycle, in the case of a 51 individual, the bicycle may not be present that day. It was gone somewhere. It's missing, or people are traveling, using it. You couldn't see, and this is a large exercise. So you go inside the household, do tick, 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 tick for all 10 items, and you're done. When you come out, you don't speak to anybody. You're just done with that exercise. You didn't find the bicycle. That person got the rating 51, and the other one got the rating 49. The idea here is they're almost by chance here or there. If this is almost like an RCT, you can simply compare them as a with without exercise, and it will give you the causal effect of the program. And the specific method, if you want to pick up from the resource that I'll share, is called regression discontinuity design. Yeah, I'm sorry, I kind of missed sharing the method that we use. If you have valid baseline data, it's called difference and differences. A lot of us use that difference and difference method. So if you have a policy cutoff, use regression discontinuity design, very similar to what I shared with you. And if no, then use propensity score matching. So you can see that PSM is on the no side of everything. Can you randomize? No. Do you have a baseline? No. Is there a policy cutoff? No. So this is this forms the fulcrum, the basis of most of the evaluation work that we have been taking. Yeah. So that kind of brings me to the end of this part of the technical workshop. I think there would be Professor Shyam Singh would be joining around 4. If the workshop organizers can say how people can participate in that, that would be great. If there are any questions between now and next 5 to 10 minutes, I can share. And let me also in the meantime share with you the resource that I was particularly talking about. If there are any questions, please feel free to raise.
Sorry, I want to ask questions, sir. Hello, sir.
Yeah, please. Yes.
I want to ask a question. Thank you for the presentation. I really enjoyed it. At first, I was not following things. I was like confused, but as time goes on, I was following. All right, sir. I will take you a little bit back. I have 2 questions. The first one is during that causal effect and this thing. Then you have in the control, you have then Y0. Then you also have Y0. You have P equals 1. P equals 1. The participant 1 in that control. So I was somehow confused there. Then another one is that difference in difference. We didn't talk much on that. I don't know if it is if you can throw more light on that difference in difference. Thank you.
Sure. What I understand is you want some discussion on difference and differences. So,
sir.
Yeah, sure. So the difference in differences is basically a combination of with, without, and before, after. So what is happening is there are 4 groups of individuals. One is a comparison group. Let's start with the program group. So there are beneficiaries. You observe them in 2 points in time. One is before and the other is after. Yeah. Then you have a control group, non-beneficiaries, whom you again observe. Okay, you're not able to hear. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay, sorry. So we have 4 types of groups. I told about the beneficiary group, where we observe them before and after the intervention. And then there is a non-beneficiary group, which you again observe before and after the program. So these are giving you 4 cells of data. So what you do is this is called difference in difference. So what is the first difference? The first difference is the difference between the before and after for the treatment group and the before and after of the control group. That is the first difference. That's the difference. Okay. In difference. So there is a second difference. The difference of these 2 differences is called difference in difference. So it's I can just quickly type it for you. So treatment after minus treatment before minus treat control. So this is the kind of design that we have actually. So this is actually very similar to what I was saying, to have a valid baseline. You have the baseline information on the non-beneficiary group before and after the program, and you have the baseline and endline information on the non-beneficiary group also before and after the program. So that kind of gives you the 4 groups of individuals, and there are regression models which can give you a DID estimate. In fact, the resource that I have shared with all of you, the Handbook of Impact Evaluation by World Bank, it's freely downloadable. It has data sets on all the methods plus many more methods that that I've covered in this session. It's for the beginners who are interested in undertaking program evaluation using a software setup. It's very user friendly actually. So I would really recommend, when I started doing my initial years in program evaluation, I kind of stayed with this book for almost 6 months to pick up the basics of program evaluation. So I'm sure you will find it very useful actually. And yes, I have shared the slides with the APIA group, so they would be sharing it, I'm sure, in a separate email to everybody, the workshop slide for video. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. So, but it remains the other one I asked. That in that causal effect, you have the participant and the control. That why is that control? You have Y0 and P equals 1 in that control. Why is it like that?
You're referring to the impact evaluation formula?
Yes, I mean the outcome will have Y1 and P participant equals 1. Then we have the outcome for non-participant, we have Y0 and still P equals 1. So
okay, I got it.
Thinking yes, that P should be 0, Y0, P0. Is it correct?
Sure. If you remember, I'll take you to that slide quickly one more time. Just to.
Thank you so much.
Can you see this slide now? No. I need to share the screen. Yeah, this is the one you're asking?
Yes, you are here. That's
sure.
what I'm asking.
Yes. So this is, as I said, that this is the, it's a theoretical expression. If I were to find the true effect of the program, and let me also impress upon you, we would never be able to find the true effect of the program. It is almost always going to be how near we can get to that truth. Yeah. So this is the theoretical truth of the evaluation of a program. And the best way that you can do it is to compare a person who has participated. So his identity. So when I say that your name is Mr. Carl, yeah, Carl is your identity. So Carl is a participant, yeah, and this is his outcome. I'm asking, what if Carl is a participant, but had he not participated? So your identity, I'm not changing. This is the identity. That's why I'm not changing. I know it's slightly counterintuitive. It should have been 0, yeah, but then it is not counterfactual, because I can observe if there is a person, let's say Benjamin, and Benjamin is not a participant, so I can say P is equal to 0, Y0, P0. I can observe both of them. But I need a Benjamin to estimate the counterfactual of the Carl, because I know there is a need to find the counterfactual for Carl. So this is the counterfactual outcome. This is the fact that I'm a participant and I participated, minus I'm a participant, but I do not participate. So what is my outcome? My identity is intact. It's just the identity problem actually. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much. If there are no more questions, then sure. Okay, I'm very quickly sharing my email ID. If you have any further questions to drop, please feel free to drop your queries. I would be very happy to kind of share if whatever I'm understanding based on that question. Okay. Thank you so much. It was wonderful interacting with all of you. Thanks a lot and best wishes for the evaluation journey. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yatin. Okay, thank you, Dr. Vivek, for your presentation. Now we'll take a bit of a break until Dr. Shyam starts his presentation. So we'll take about 5-6 minute break here.
Ranika, we start at 4:10.
Oh, okay. So 4:10. So we
Yes.
will have then a 10-minute break, right?
Yeah, 4:08,
Okay.
4:10. Yeah.
Okay, so everyone, now we have a 10-minute break. So maybe grab something, take a breather, and then we'll start at 4:10 p.m. Indian Standard Time.
Yatin, Randike, can you confirm if you can see the PPT?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, based on where you are. Let's begin with the second part of this workshop. I'm sure you have gone through a very nice class before that, where my colleague, Dr. Vivek, has discussed various approaches to impact evaluation. I'm going to, take it forward, basically addressing another aspect of program evaluation, which is program monitoring and process evaluation, basically. And, what happened more often when we look at the causal relations, right? Whether we find them, whether there's a causality or there isn't, the burden of explaining that causality or absence of it comes basically to the part that I'm going to discuss. Because more often, simple questions are being asked: why, if there's an impact, why we have achieved this result, or why we haven't, how this has been achieved. So a lot of these why and how questions, we need to understand the processes that basically explain, whether the program activities, the input, enable the program team to achieve those results or not. So in this part, what I'm going to do is basically going to discuss the process monitoring part, which is very important to in order to keep track of the results and progress. And then the second part of it, I'll discuss briefly different approach. Basically how to do process evaluation. As we understand that we do not have much of time, so what I will do is I'll keep discussion as a very basic, so that we are able to understand the basic tenets of process monitoring and evaluation. And I'm sure you will have questions, so please feel free to write the question in the chat box, and as and when I see, I will respond. I'm not sure whether you have right to unmute yourself and speak, but if that is possible, you can also do that. I'm completely okay with that. We have about 1 hour, 48 minutes. Again, that's kind of a offer from my side. One, if you want to have a 2-minute strategic break in between after say 55 minutes, let me know. I can do that as well, so that we don't continue with 1 hour 15 minutes straight away. But then again, it's optional. If you need that, please let me know. Okay, so let me start. And whatever I'm going to present today, it's mostly coming from the experiences that we have while evaluating complex interventions. When I say complex interventions, they are multidimensional and addressing the different issues within one sector or in different sectors. And I will limit my the discussion here with the development intervention, particularly the public policies related to human development. So that's the boundary that I would like to maintain while discussing the process monitoring and process evaluation. Can anybody confirm that you can hear me properly if there's no problem?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Thanks a lot. So, okay. More often people ask what is a process, or what do you call processes in a development intervention? Well, of course, it's easy to define, and it's not in mathematics. Basically it's simple. Whatever it takes for a implementation team to achieve the intended results. Now, whatever it takes includes the activity that you have in the program design, but there is an ecosystem around each program activity. And that ecosystem, enables the program team to achieve the intended goals and outcomes. So that's what we, in very simple terms, we refer as process. I'm sure many of you would agree with me that in current form, and I'm not talking about the smaller interventions being implemented by smaller NGOs, I'm talking about even the complex intervention being implemented by sometimes international agencies funded by well-known donors, and they are sometimes across the country, sometimes multiple countries. Not all these interventions usually have a system where they can basically tell us where the things are going wrong in terms of the processes. So they don't really ring the process deficiency alarm. And that is why we need process monitoring, because no matter how sound an implementation design is, if we do not have a structured approach to process monitoring, probably we might lose in terms of the efficiency and effectiveness of the processes, and which will have impact on the results. Well, lots of process triggered anomalies, deficiencies are either not recognized in the implementation design in practical terms, or we do not find them, or we cannot define them as a process simply because they fall short of those definitions. Now, if we do not have, again, a full-fledged sound system of process monitoring, we tend to ignore, but we tend to lose those moments where we can actually launch the course correction and basically correct whatever is not working well. So monitoring of the process monitoring, basically strategies, they are there to ensure the intended program goals. As I said, not necessary that the program monitoring is a part of the implementation design, but it should be, and rather it must be. More often people misunderstand processes equivalent to activities. Well, definitely activities can be called processes, but the program process, they have a bigger, horizon rather than the activities. There are several processes which are actually not the activities. So there has to have a robust process monitoring, system in the implementation design. Now, if we have effective process monitoring system, I think most of the time, particularly the countries like India, very complex and very diverse and very big, and similar countries, policymakers always deal with the puzzle that why the same program, having same processes, same kinds of, the inputs and the design, actually do better in one place, but it fails in another place. I mean, the experiences suggest that most of the time answers lies in the processes. So because the processes are contextually, determined, and they kind of react to the program, depends on what context is, how people are perceiving, how reacting, and therefore even the program has a similar design, similar processes, it does not yield same results. So that is why most of the time in the complex setting, policymakers or implementers, they deal with this puzzle that when everything is same, why program is yielding different results in different places. So effective process monitoring actually can answer this question, if it is followed properly. Now let me move towards a usual process trajectory. What a process, a trajectory looks like in a development intervention. Well, mostly we group them in three different buckets. There are program processes that are part of the program design or planning. Since they are part of the program design and planning, they are also reflected in implementation strategies. So that's one, I would say, the basket of the processes. Another is basically, implementation related, because if you have a guidance with respect to how the processes are to be, taken care of, performed, how they need to be, monitored, then definitely there are systems in place in the implementation phase where you have a certain process protocols to be followed, and so that we are able to achieve the intended the results. Now, in order to ensure that we achieve intended results, there are different basket of processes. Now, I'm not suggesting all three baskets are mutually exclusive. They necessarily may not be. But, so they are not mutually exclusive. Of course, they are interrelated, they are interconnected, okay? And not necessarily that they start, of the time phase that I'm trying to suggest here. But for our convenience, for monitoring convenience, it's easy to distinguish them based on what is given in the program design, based on what is being offered for the implementation, and based on what is needed to ensure that the results are achieved. So these are the example that I have written in the boxes. They are just for sake of example. I mean, we can have n number of processes. So I just wrote just for the sake of making my points clear. So with these three kinds of the basket, we can identify and we can actually deploy, design and deploy the processes. So what happens basically next is, if you look at the first two, they are mostly internal to program. Not well, they are part of the design. Therefore, the team has control over those processes. But the moment we move forward in trying to make sure ensure the results, then some processes are related to the program and society or beneficiary or target population interaction. So now these two bifurcation, internal to program and program society interaction, basically has an impact on in terms of how the processes should be designed, how they should be monitored, and how they should be, we should be maintaining the quality, and we should be adhering to the the norms and the compliances. So it's quite different when it comes to the internal processes that are internal to program, and when it comes to the program society interaction, because there is an exposure to the outside society and the beneficiaries. So when we move in this process trajectory from the program planning to implementation and results, the nature, the sensitivity of these program processes also changes. Please feel free if you have any question in between, so that we can address before I move to another slide. So in case if you have any doubt, please put across. Okay, so these three types of categorization processes, I divide into 4 sets, of the processes, and they basically include, I think, the processes in totality. So the first set of processes are about the program activities. As I said, the program activities also, people think that they are the processes, but they're not all the processes. So there's one of the subsets of we call program activities. The second set is basically the strategies that are required to ensure that the program activities are implemented efficiently. And for the example's sake, I've listed down few. For example, managing stakeholders, community interaction orientation, though it's also part of the stakeholder management, but since it's for the development intervention dealing with the people directly, it's a very important aspect. So I just kept it separately. So capacity building, resource management. So there are several processes that are needed to be there in order to ensure that the activities are implemented efficiently and effectively. So that's the second. The first set of processes are about the activities. Second set of processes are about what enables these activities to be implemented, or what enables the team to implement these activities. Third set of processes are about the processes that help us to achieve the outcomes. Now, what are these processes? They are related to quality assurance, if not insurance, I'm sorry, it's a quality assurance mechanism, compliance. They are about the feedback system. They are about the standard reporting. They're about the effective tracking of the indicators, data in progress. They're about the course correction. So third set of processes basically are about how to ensure that we are actually, okay, activities are being implemented, they are being done. Let's go ahead and see if we are able to achieve the outcomes and results. So this third set of processes basically enable us to ensure that we achieve what we wanted to achieve. And the fourth is about exit strategies. I think most of the program, when the implementation agency and donor, they basically withdraw from the program, they want to make the intervention sustainable. And there's a series of exit strategies that are needed to be there. And that's the fourth set of processes. So if we take these four, I'm sure, I think we largely cover the gamut of the processes that are involved in any development intervention. Okay, any question on, till now, if you have, please. I'm just worried that if I go ahead and maybe, we might lose the track. So you have any prop question, you can type here. Now let me move forward. Okay, how do we do process monitoring? That's a central question. So, after what I have did in the last, what I have done in the last three, 4 PPTs is just trying to tell you where the processes are, they are identified, what are the different stages and what are the different sets of processes. Now, how do we do the process monitoring? Simple 4-step. Well, this is definitely, they are not simple, but I think they are the basic steps that one has to take care of when we talk about the process monitoring. One is we need to have a process infrastructure. What is process infrastructure? I'll discuss in the next slide. Second, we need process monitors. Definitely somebody is to be there to really monitor what's happening. Third, we need process map. We can design, depends on how complex and how big the intervention is. We can have either one map or multiple maps. So I'll definitely show you an example. So we need to have a process infrastructure, complete process infrastructure. We need to have process monitors. We need to have process maps. And the fourth thing that is important is we can have then a process monitoring matrix, which basically enables any program team to carry out the process monitoring. So I will discuss each of them separately. One, what is process infrastructure that I'm talking about? Two, definitely you need a process monitor. I'll skip that. What is process map that I'm talking about and how we can actually have one in a very simple form of process monitoring matrix. Colleagues, please believe me, it's not a rocket science. So, it's a very flexible approach. So people can definitely, identify, make it suitable, make changes in any of these approaches or any of these, part, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's a map, whether it's a matrix. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually present a basic a framework of process monitoring. So I'll just talk about the basic elements of process monitoring matrix. So these are the 4 essential, ingredient, 4 essential tools that we need to have if we want to carry out an effective process monitoring. So let's go one by one, except the second one, the process monitor. So I'll discuss the 3, the first one, the third, and the fourth. What is process infrastructure? Now, this has to be part of the program design. If at all it's not part of the program design, then definitely implementation team can figure out, can design it separately. What is process infrastructure? The process infrastructure actually includes pre-designed processes, right? And not only pre-designed processes, there are emergent processes also. So there are processes that you have identified in the design, but there are processes where you just think that they are needed to make sure that the intervention is implemented effectively. So that is called emergent processes. So you have pre-designed processes, you have emergent processes. If these two together, okay, you need to have process indicators. Now, let me tell you, I have really not seen, I have about 8 years of my career in impact evaluation and monitoring. I have seen very rare instances where the project design has process indicators. Usually they are taken for granted, but for an effective process monitoring, one has to have process indicators. Definitely for pre-designed processes, one can have the indicator. For emergent processes that are, that while implementing, you think, okay, these are also important processes we need to take care of. Of course, the implementation team can figure it out what could be the possible indicator for this emergent processes. And then we need to have a process monitoring mechanism. I'll be talking in terms of the matrix. And we should be having a system in such a way that it enables the team to take the course correction. So we need to also have the course correction mechanism. Put together all these dimensions we call process infrastructure. This is one can have for the entire program intervention, one can have for the different dimension of a program. So if you have it for the different dimension of the program, it is easy to track and follow and make course correction. I'll again repeat, these are the 5 important elements. We have the pre-designed processes, we have indicators, and there are some emergent processes. We should have indicators for that as well. Then we have the monitoring mechanism, and then we have the course correction mechanism. Now, this makes a complete process infrastructure. So this is the first part of monitoring. The second was the process monitor, and the third was process map. So for the example's sake, I drew this map. This map is nothing but, there was a project in India where I was also involved. This project was basically to enhance the access of primary education. One of the results they wanted to achieve was to bring down the dropout rates among the kids. So what they did was basically they did 3 things. They trained teachers, in innovative pedagogy so that they can teach students effectively. Second thing they did, they also designed innovative material for the students. And third thing they did was they basically launched awareness program for the parents so that they send their kids to school and they don't let them drop out of the school. So it was a simple process map I tried, and while we did the process evaluation, we had this process map done. So basically what I reflect here is the HQ, which is headquarter of the work. It could be anything, okay? Then there is a donor, and then there is a government, because they have to take the NOC, no objection certificate, from the government, because they wanted to use the schools and teachers and train them. It was a private effort, so so there was a need for taking no objection certificate from the government. Now the HQ is the organization that was implementing the program. They have 3 different teams. As I said, one team, which I have mentioned here as Office 1, was responsible for training the teachers. So they identified trainers, and then the trainers trained the teachers. And it was expected that the teachers would adopt innovative teaching style and they will teach the students. Another team was responsible for designing innovative material within the curriculum framework of the state government. So they helped schools in designing some extra material for the kids. And the third team was engaged in orienting parents with the awareness program. Now, this is what a simple map is. if you see these processes, so what first Office 1 did, they recruit trainers. Okay, those trainers they got into training and trained teachers, right? Teachers provided feedbacks on the training because, every year or every 6 months, they get the, the results from the students from the different tests. So they get the feedback. Okay. And teachers also give feedback to the team, not only for the trainers, but also on not only on the training, but also on the trainers. So feedback also goes to the team back. Okay. The schools also take the feedback and does the performance evaluation of schools, right? And teachers are expected or were expected to teach innovatively. Now, these black circles, they are basically process junctions. We call them process junctions. So process junctions are where a lot of processes are involved in order to deliver and in order to implement an activity. So these, I'll discuss about the process junctions in the next slide. But these, what I have just, kind of exhibited here, these black circles, they are the process junctions because there are a lot of processes involved: training, feedback, analyzing them, again revising the training curriculum, etc., etc. So what do? We look at these process junctions. Each junction, we need to find out what are the processes that we are trying to look at. Okay, and what could be the possible indicator. So for example, performance evaluation. PE stands for performance evaluation. Thank you. So, for example, when office or team recruits trainer, that there are 3 things that they wanted to look at. One, qualification of the trainers, their professional experience and recruitment process. How did they, recruit them? Now, these were also the indicators. So a process evaluation will evaluate the whole process of recruiting, efficient trainer, qualified trainer. These are just indicative. I'm just listing here indicative, list of indicators. There can be many more. Now, if second junction, if we go, when trainers train teacher, what are the things that can be looked at from the process perspective? One is what material they are using to train teachers and what is the pedagogy that they are adopting. Therefore, the teachers learn something new. And when go to the process junction, another process junction, innovative teaching, then there could be following ways to look at those processes. One, what innovations teachers do in their pedagogy while teaching the students. 2, are they able to establish connect with the students? 3, are there any change in the exam test patterns, or experiments or, extracurricular, a lot of things. So every process junction should have, because it's a lot of processes around, can identify the process and have to identify the process indicator. So in a process evaluation, this process map helps a lot. It helps a lot because it tells you what are the process junctions. It tells you what are the potential processes that are involved. And it tells you what you should be looking in terms of the monitoring of those processes. What could be the possible indicator in order to monitor them. Now, let me, so this is what, now we do it for each junction. I just exhibited here for the Office 1 arm. There are 2 more arms here for Office 2 and Office 3. Now the same practice or same exercise can be done for each of the process junction, from Office 2 to school in terms of material, and then performance and attendance that the school takes from the student back, whether dropout has come down or not. Then there's Office 3, which organizes awareness program for the parents, hoping that the parents will enroll their kids in the mainstream education system, and they won't get them out of the schools, and therefore the dropout rate will come down. So these are the major programs, right? Okay, we may ignore the donor side, we may ignore the government side because these are the only activities or just one activity, right? But the main body of the program is Office 1, Office 2, and Office 3. What we can do is, if the program is complex and huge, we can draw and design these process maps for each of the dimension of the program. What I have done, it is for the full program. This program was not that big, but we can actually do it for each dimension, each arm of the project, if the project is really complex and big. And then we can definitely identify these process junctions. So when I say process junctions, what does that mean? Let me just show it in the next slide. A process junction means what I'm trying to look at. There are some, as I said earlier, there are some pre-designed or emergent processes. Okay. Around those processes, we need to look at whether existing capacities are adequate, and whether they are compliances to different protocols that the processes might have, or they are needed to comply with. Timeliness, whether they are being completed within the time provided, right? What are the quality benchmarks available? So for example, if we just go back in the last slide, for example, if the trainer needs to train teachers, and if they design some of the material for the training, are there any quality benchmarks available to rate that training material against? Is there a benchmarking or protocol available by the national level or government suggested protocols, or maybe any international body, or maybe by UNICEF, because they probably deal with the child education a lot. So is there any benchmark available against that you can actually evaluate the quality of that material? So in process junction, we look at the processes, we look at the capacity and compliances, timeliness, quality benchmarks, and resource optimization. Whatever resource that is available, whether within that we are able to complete and comply with the process protocols. Why resource optimization is a very important point, because no matter we have billions of dollars, believe me, for any intervention, always budget is less. I mean, if somebody has just a $1,000 to implement a small intervention, that is not adequate. That is always less for the team or for the person. Somebody has a 1 million or 1 billion. You ask any program team, they will never say that they have adequate budget. So one of the important aspects of the process is that whether all the activities and processes are complied with, or they are implemented within the resource available. So each process junction has these kind of so out of these 5, you can pick what is important, whether the capacities are important, whether the quality benchmarks important, whether the activity was completed within time, and whether they were completed within the resources allocated to this. So again, for each junction, when we design or define the process and indicators, we need to keep these elements in mind. Any questions till now before I go ahead? If there are any queries, or you can put forward. Okay. So what I did, let me just go back very quickly. Sorry, there was 4 things that I was, there were 4 parts, 4 different aspects of process monitoring. And I said I'll discuss 3, the first, third, and the fourth. So I already discussed the first, and I discussed the third one. Okay. This was associated with third one. Let me come to the fourth one, that is process monitoring metrics. Let me just give a caveat here that this matrix is very simple. You can always make it complex. You can always change it. It's not a rocket science. The idea is to get the information related to process monitoring in a systematic fashion. That's it. Because if you get the evidence and information in systematic fashion, it increases your ability to take decisions and take course corrections. So this is a very simple format. Depends on what you want to achieve, how complex intervention is. You can redesign and as per the need, you can make it more complex. What this process monitoring matrix is. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to identify the process junction, which we already have done in term when we when we draw the map. Okay, every junction, as I said, has key processes. So you can list down the key processes, and every process has indicators. They can be 1 indicator, 2 indicator, 3 indicators, whatever the number of indicators are. So we have a very clear idea about these are the process junctions, these are the key processes, and these are the indicators against each processes. Now, who will collect the process data or who will do the process monitoring? Whether it can be process monitor or sometime it can be the program team itself, because not many organizations have a separate process monitor. Yes, they do have a M&E team, but though I don't want to generalize it, but most of the time M&E team fetches quantitative data, compile it, and probably use some analysis for the decision making. Process monitoring is more of a field job rather than compiling the data all the time and doing real-time analysis rather than doing analysis once in a quarter or once in a 6 months and come up with some patterns. So it is a bit different from the M&E data, monitoring and evaluation data that gives you some pattern because we analyze quarterly or 6 monthly. Process monitoring is more of a field process and it has to be done real time. So, well, definitely there can be some frequency based on you go and collect because sometimes activities are one-time activities, sometimes activities are recurring. So training, if happens all the time in the project, you keep on doing those things. And if something happens once, just once in a project or twice in the entire intervention period cycle, then you probably have to just, do the analysis monitoring twice. So depends on what is the recurring cycle or, vein or what is the frequency of an activity in processes. Definitely it becomes a real-time activity. So we have process junction, we have a key processes, and then we have a process indicators. And then we know who is going to collect the process data, monitoring data. Then we know when it's to be collected. Time is very important for the processes, because for outcome, for impact, for other data, you can actually go after 1 month or 2 months, not much changes. You can still get the relevant data and can do the analysis. But for the process data, if the training is going on, if the feedback is not being taken on time, right after training, if you reach out to the teachers to give the feedback 10 days, 12, 15 days after the training is concluded, you may not get the feedback that probably you would have got right after the training. So my point is that the timeline are quite sensitive in process monitoring. One has to be very sure and also sensitive enough that when that process monitoring is to be done or when that process data is to be collected. So once we have that timeline, the process data collected within the timeline, then we also look at the compliance and deficiency. What is the compliance and can we recruit field officer as a process monitor at the same time? Well, we can do that definitely. The ideal situation is, that we have a process monitor separately. But again, I understand that there's a resource implication, and if you do not have a big project or spare resources, probably one of your field officer can work as a process monitor. But it is really pertinent. It is important to have a field monitor, process monitor. So it can be done. I mean, the suggestion, the most of the time recommendation we make is that M&E team should have a process monitor, because M&E team is not the implementing team, right? They are the different people within the organization. They should have 1 or 2, whatever depends on the needs, process monitor. But yes, if there are resource crunch, you do not have much of the resources available, definitely one of your field officer can work as a process monitor. Vanilla, okay, this is mostly about the standard method I'm talking about. This is not specific to some institutions. Mostly what is basic, one can always redesign and tweak based on the need. But again, I would, refrain saying that it's a theoretical approach. It's quite practical approach. But yes, it's a standard method. And it is evolving. As I said, not many organizations have the process monitoring framework ready. They have a monitoring and evaluation framework. But one part of monitoring and evaluation framework is the process monitoring. So a lot of, I won't name, but I'm saying even the biggest, we know the funders internationally, even the program funded by them and closely monitored by them also do not have process monitoring. So people are getting it, that how important this process monitoring is, and I think they are trying to integrate. So it's of course a standard method, but definitely not a theoretical approach. It's quite practical. Okay, so when you collect the process data, we look at whether those stipulated process were followed, and when we say whether they were followed, we look at the compliances, means what they need to do, and if there are deficiency, meaning what wasn't there, what couldn't be done in intentionally or unintentionally, whatever the case is, and then we can think of the course correction. So based on the compliances and deficiency, we can have the possible step to correct the process. Sorry, it's an unfinished sentence here. Possible step to correct the deficiencies or the processes. Okay, just there are a couple of questions. Okay, when can the process monitoring be done? We have a standard timeline. Actually, process monitoring is done throughout the project. It, as I said, the process monitoring starts right from the designing of the intervention, because you need to have a set of processes part of the design. In fact, the process monitoring framework should be part of the design. So it is start right from the beginning. It goes till the time the last activity is carried out in the project. So there's no standard timeline. Yes, there are standard timelines for each activities and processes. So we have to follow just what I'm suggesting in the process monitoring matrix. Sorum, yeah, we can use the focal project officer to collect the program monitoring data. We can do that. Again, for the very reason why do we have a separate M&E team, I think that also applies for the process monitoring. So if you have a process monitor part of the M&E team, is better, because if somebody from the implementation team collect the data, it may be biasness or sometimes conflict of interest, and the real deficiencies may not come to forth. So one has to be careful about that. Otherwise, there's no set principle that you need to have a separate person. Definitely, your program officer project officer can do that. But again, it is important if you have a separate person as part of your M&E team as a process monitor. Do we need to keep updated the process maps? Definitely, we need to keep, if your processes are taking a different route than what you have thought about in the program design. So because of the exigencies, for example, because of the COVID, believe me, I'm sure you people will agree with me. A lot of interventions they had to modify, they had to customize their approaches because of the COVID. A lot of the development interventions. So yes, in that case, you have to really update the process map. But even if we don't have a shock like COVID, and if there is a requirement to change the strategies and processes, you might have to update your process map. Vikram, yes, of course you can use that, but as I said, this document is what I'm trying to present is basically a very basic. You can always innovate and and think of what else can be done. What I'm trying to present today is a very basic idea of process monitoring. Rajni, you are right, because not everything can be monitored, right? So yes, if there are so many process junctions, it is important to prioritize few, and then one can focus on them. So in reality, we do not focus on everything, right? As I said in my process map, that we can ignore, the interaction with the donor, interaction with the government, because they are just a one time or fewer times rather than the main project. So well, definitely you can prioritize some process sections that are really important to achieve the intended results. Definitely. I think the process monitor is more so for the internal purposes, Mr. Ramanake. It is not for the donor response. Well, some donor might, because now we are thinking very seriously. I think and a lot of platform, in a lot of platform, we debate about the process monitoring. And recently, at least I have seen some dynamics, taking place. Even future donor might ask you to have a process monitor, but it's mostly for the internal learning and internal course correction, because it helps the organization to achieve the goals. So I would still say it's quite internal as of now. Yeah, in terms of the mapping process deviation, well, definitely, if you have a benchmark, if you have a quality benchmark, if you have protocols to be followed, the deviation, definitely, when you look at the deficiency in compliances, you will get to know whether there are deviation from the set process protocol that you might have. So, and I think that's the idea, Rakesh, that, you get to know those deviation and you actually take the course correction within time so that you can produce the outcomes and results. So definitely the core idea of the process monitoring is to actually find out if there are process deviations. Okay, so yes, so monitoring guideline for a country program in the recent past, where you have considered only quality benchmark and progress tracking. Yeah, but definitely that's a important component, but I think the process monitoring can go beyond these two. They are definitely the fundamental element, vanilla, definitely, where we talk about the quality benchmark and progress tracking, but then there are multiple other dimensions that we need to take care of for a holistic process monitoring. And in order to facilitate this, I think we can definitely have a better approach. Thank you. Is there any visualization tool that we can show the expected processes as well as the current status of the processes? Well, we can design one. I'm doing it for the couple of projects currently, just because for the practical purposes, I have not still finalized them. Otherwise, I could have shared with you. But maybe later on, if you can connect with me, probably I can definitely share with you. There are some visualization tools. Not that I have seen anywhere, but definitely I'm trying to have a designed one for me. So I have really not found as of now till any platform where publicly we can use that. So we can definitely do it. All right. I think, thank you very much for these questions. Please keep asking questions, because I think a lot of things get clearer when you ask these questions. So in this process monitoring matrix, I think that once we have the course correction, and that we can take those course correction, and that is why in the process junction, you must have seen one of the component was the course correction mechanism. So one needs to have the mechanism. What happens when the findings of a process monitoring reach to the people, to the relevant people and the responsible people? So what is the way to actually do the course correction? And maybe in the next round of the process monitoring, one can definitely follow up with what is happening, whether the course correction were taken, whether they were effective or not. So the course correction becomes again, the corrected processes become the original processes, and you start again monitoring them rather than the old one, because you might have tweaked them, you might have changed them. So these were the four pillars of process monitoring. I discussed three. One was about the process infrastructure, process junction, process map and junction, and fourth was this process monitoring matrix. So this is what I had to offer in terms of the process monitoring. I'll move to process evaluation. Okay, so Rajni, what has been your experience of course correction? I think your question is for me, if I'm correct, or is for Vanilla? So, okay, so, well, and that's, okay, so I think the course correction cannot be and should not be taken using ad hoc approach. And that is why, if you just, repeated, I'm saying again, that when I was talking about the process junction, you have to have a course correction mechanism for the important processes that you have. If something goes wrong, what would be done to correct those deficiencies? Now, yes, we know that we have the risk, usually we have the risk mitigation strategies. Partially, they also respond to the course correction, because if something happens, you have the risk mitigation strategies ready with you. But then they are not sufficient, because they're not necessarily they respond to all the processes and the deficiency. So the step that you take is, the first is you need to have a process course correction mechanism ready with you, that if something goes wrong, what would you do? So would you go back and complete the loop and start the process again? Would you change in terms of the quality benchmark? Would you change in terms of the compliance? Would you change in terms of, you know, the capacities that are required? What would you do? And when it is to be done? Because if you change the, you know, the whole training material design for the trainers to teach, to train teachers, you know, the entire loop has to be completed. So you need to start from the beginning again. So, you know, the mechanism has to speak about what should be done if there are problems with respect to the different, you know, parameters or compliance or protocols of the processes. So this is what, so stepwise we take the, you know, we take the lead and try and see. But I think the most important thing is the process course correction mechanism that you need to have. Number one. Number two, we should be knowing what we should do when something is lacking in the process, some deficiencies are found. So it's very difficult to tell you the standard path for this, but then depends on what process is. You might have to do the course correction right away. You might have to go back and change or modify or tweak some of the program design. We don't know how far it will take you back. So, but if there is a mechanism for the process, you know, monitoring and course correction, you know, it helps you to take relevant and immediate steps. Okay, so let me move to process evaluation. It is quite, you know, quite, you know, related to process monitoring. If someone has a process monitoring system, process evaluation becomes very easy. Dennis, I would request if you can mute, because I'm getting some noise. Okay. Now let me come to the, so whatever I offered till now, whatever I discussed was the basic structure of process monitoring. If someone start with this, I'm sure you will have a nice, fine, and effective process monitoring system within the organization. Now let me go to process evaluation, which is the second part of this session. And I just said, if you have a process monitoring system, the process evaluators like me, it makes things really easier. Because if you do not have, then for a process evaluator, we have to start from the scratch. Means design a map, because if you do not have a process map, we don't understand what processes you are, adopting. We don't understand what exactly the, the process junction are, and what are the different indicators. So if you have the process monitoring system, it makes not only the organization, but even the process evaluator's life very easy. Okay. Process evaluation is basically an assessment to understand the effectiveness of program processes. So whatever the process monitoring system you have, whatever course correction you did, in the evaluation, we try and find out whether this is of some standard and quality or not, whether this has worked or not. This is a simple assessment. But as a process evaluator, and I really take a lot of caution here, that this is not a fail or pass assessment. Process evaluation, the major idea of the process evaluation is to help the implementers improve their program design. Number one. Number two, implementation design, means implementing strategies. Okay, that includes process infrastructure and everything. So whenever we do the process evaluation, please do not take as if it's a fail or pass assessment. It's basically for the improvement of the program processes. Because if we have that attitude, believe me, it changes. It changes a lot of perspectives, not only in the mind of evaluator, but also in the mind of the implementing agency. Because as an evaluator, if you're a third-party evaluator, if you deal with the implementing agency, they are very, sometimes hesitant in because they don't know what is going to come out, whether things are really good or things are bad. Based on that, their funding might be affected. So I think it is really important to pitch the process evaluation as an improvement process rather than a failure process assessment. So that's one thing that I wanted to share before I go into the thick of the things of process evaluation. Okay. Randike, I'm sure you are taking note of the queries about the sharing the recording, etc.
Yes, Dr. Shah, we'll be we'll be putting it up on our YouTube channel after.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. Okay, now the sorry, it's PE, it's not PM, my fault. The process evaluation benefits both. It's not PM, PM means process monitoring, sorry, it's a PE. The process evaluation benefits both implementers and donor agencies or policymakers. It helps implementers because they can know what is working, where, how, under what context. Okay. For the donors and policymakers, it is also helpful because then they can link or attribute a success or failure, whatever it is, either to the poor processes, meaning poor implementation design, or to the project design itself. Because sometimes there are problems with the program design. Sometimes program design is good, but then there were poor processes and poor implementation design, and therefore the program, didn't get success. So it is, if the process evaluation, I think, helps both, and if it's done effectively, then it actually benefits both implementers as well as the donor and the policymakers. And the second one is quite important for the policymakers, because if that information is not really available, that what is the real cause behind success or failure, then there might be wrong policy decisions taken. For example, if the processes were not really effective, since there was no process evaluation or since there was no process monitoring system, they can still think, oh, that the program design was incorrect or program design was faulty, and therefore they might, either change the program or they shut it down. So, it is really important to understand what went wrong. Is it because of the poor processes, poor implementation, or is it because of the program? There was a problem with the program design itself. So I think it's beneficial for both. Well, why do we do process evaluation? Of course, I think I have been talking about for the program improvement. That's number one. The second is, accountability of implementers. And third is the knowledge, so that one can replicate, one can adopt in the different contexts. But let me tell you something here. And I have faced this a lot as a process evaluator. I have faced it a lot in the sense that given the choice, how the findings of a process evaluation are being used by the consumers, in this case, maybe the donor, maybe the commissioning agency of evaluation, or maybe the implementers. They choose the third one on account of, rather than the second one, because accountability means that it may have impact on the performance appraisal in jobs. But it's easy to take as a knowledge and improvement, which of course is one of the potential or one of the major objective of the program evaluation is. But people, process evaluation can be used as a tool of, a tool for accountability. So these are the three. But when it comes to the last two, most of the time, the stakeholders, particularly the implementing and commissioning agencies, they prefer third, as a potential use of process evaluation. Okay, how to plan a process evaluation, right? Well, to be frank, of course, there are so many formats available. A lot of people have written also on process evaluation, though not much is available. But some of the organizational handbooks are available. People have written on it, but we don't have any definite format. but it does not mean we should not have one. We definitely need to have one, a flexible roadmap. And I'm putting more emphasis on flexible because process evaluation cannot be watertight compartment, type blueprint or type design, because process evaluation, you don't know till what extent you need to really go and check those processes and evaluate them. While you understand that in impact evaluation design, we do understand that there's a theory of change, there are different level of results, output, outcome, and impact. So we have a definite shape of the program results and goals. But then when it comes to the processes, most of the time you might have to hunt for triangulating the evidence and trying to find out what went wrong. You might have to stretch a bit. So one has to have a roadmap, but it needs to be flexible so that you can make changes in your process evaluation design as per the need. But then there's no definite format does not mean, as I said, we do not have one. There are a few things that one needs to do before commencing the data collection process for the process evaluation. One is one has to understand the conceptualization and logic of the program, which we mostly refer as a theory of change. Because theory of change gives you the idea about the three baskets of the processes which I talked about in the beginning. What are the the design related, what are the implementation related processes, and what are the processes that ensure or try to ensure whether the program outcomes will be achieved or not. So the first thing that one has to do is have a thorough understanding of conceptualization of the program, the theory of the program, the logic, the philosophy behind the program. Why do implementers think that if they do this 1, 2, 3, 4 interventions, they are going to get the success? The answer to this question basically explain the logic and theory and conceptualization of the program. So we need to understand that first. Second, we need to understand operationalization of this logic, how you're going to operationalize it. So, okay, you know that if the students are dropping out of the school, then probably we have to have a three-way approach. One, train the teachers so that they teach effectively, innovatively, so that they can attract students. Two, design innovative materials so that students get they are engaged with the material, then they are attracted, they come to school. Three, you drive awareness campaign for the parents, therefore they send their kids to school, they don't pull them out. Okay, so we understand that these but how do we operate it? So we have to understand the operationalization, and that's where we need to think about the different teams, different stakeholders, different systems and processes to achieve those outcomes. Third, clarifying or finalizing priorities and dependencies. Not all program design reflect on dependencies or priorities. Okay, so if they don't, then you have to finalize. If they do, then you might have to clarify a few things with the implementers. What does that mean? As an evaluator, you need to have a fair idea about the entire program design. Review of the process documentation, if any. Rarely, I have seen in few projects earlier, where I think some of the organizations also, even now they do it. They actually have the process documentation. It's become very easy to evaluate the process if they have documented it properly. It becomes very easy to replicate if you have a process documentation. So basically, process documentation is like from A to Z, whatever you have done to implement a program, you narrate it down, in a different, in effective ways, in an interactive manner. So, but this is not done for most of the interventions now. During my initial years of career, I have seen process documentation for various interventions, but they still exist, by the way. I'm not saying they don't exist, but not seen much in the recent times where basically either the donor or the implementing agency actually put a lot of emphasis on process documentation. They just do, but they don't document it properly. So if the documentation is really available, you can review it. It's a great help if you have a process document for the process evaluation. The next step, of course, is you finalize your sample strategies, sample size, field visit plan. I'll talk about that later. Last, which I put in red, color, include implementers in data collection. Now, this is coming from, the experience that I have seen, and I have also, whether I have done myself and I have seen in other evaluations. in processes, because in other evaluation, you have evidence, you have data coming from households or beneficiaries. For impact evaluation, you can easily find out what impact is being created. But when we talk to the processes, you have to interact with a different stakeholder qualitatively. Now, when you interact, when you interact with the different stakeholder, try to find out whether they were deficiency, whether they were they complied with whatever the protocol was there. Most of the time, there are accusations made by different stakeholders when they think that the processes have not been followed, and there may be implications on their performance or job. One of the experience that I can share with you is in one of the project that we were evaluating. It was funded by a big private bank. It's a huge project in millions of dollars, and crores of Indian rupee. I was doing process evaluation, and one of the accusation that came from the beneficiaries, particularly potential beneficiaries, was about the corruption, because there was some transaction was involved. Now, I'll respond to this couple of questions just after I complete my point. So, when these acquisitions were made, of course, and that's the one reason I said we don't have to have a watertight compartment evaluation design for process evaluation, because we had to take extra step, triangulate this information in order to ascertain whether such things were there or not. Though we were not police, we were not any probing agency, but since it has implication on various other program processes, we thought of looking into it. Now, just because we had implementers traveling with us all the time during process evaluation, well, definitely I took caution of keeping them at a safe distance so that they don't influence the the respondents, the responses. But then, since the accusations were made in front of them, I didn't have to defend them. I didn't have to. Otherwise, it's very difficult. In any evaluation, if the evaluation finding don't go in the favor of the implementing agency, the first question, the first query they raise, or rather the accusation they made is that your methodology is not good. Therefore, you are going to get, you are getting different results. Of course, anything is not foolproof in social sciences, but still, it helps if you have the implementers with you, so that you don't have to really defend what observations or the opinion might have come from the different stakeholder. So keeping implementers during process evaluation is the key. That's what I found. Yes, is up to the capacity and the skill set of the person, of the evaluator, that the evaluator needs to maintain a safe distance from the implementers, so that implementers does not influence the respondents and their responses. There are Rajni, there's so many guidelines available. I have to search. Of course, I'll get few. Well, if you can, I'll provide my email ID later on. We can of course discuss on that, and I can share a couple of them. But I think, as I was saying, the process documentation to me is a quite old process. In recent time, I didn't see much, though it's a very helpful to have a process documentation. So there are guidelines available. As of now, I cannot present one, don't have time, but later on, I think you can, if you just email me, I can provide some, as a sample. Yes, the process evaluation is done within the scope of the project. Yes, definitely. You don't have to have a control for that. You do it within the scope of the project. Do we engage our beneficiary during process? Yes, definitely we do. I'll come to that point a bit later. Just give me a few minutes. I'll definitely discuss this. Okay, so when we have done it, then another step in the planning of process evaluation is either you use, if there is a process map which I was talking about. If they do not have, then design one, because as an evaluator, we need to know what are the process junctions. Okay, what are the different elements of the the process junction, or what is the process infrastructure in its totality. So if the program design doesn't have process map, then of course evaluator have to or should rather design a process map in order to make things clearer for the evaluation purpose. So these are, I think, few steps while planning the process evaluation. Next, work out a data collection plan. I'll talk about a bit later in the next slide about the method, about the tool. I already spoke about it, that evaluation plan should not be narrowly defined, because not many times you might have to translate information. You might need to have additional information. So it's really helpful if you have your plan is quite flexible. Now, if the previous evaluation has been done, on the similar programs in the similar organizations, you can use those insights, and you can build your plan on those insights. They are always helpful. What kinds of process evaluation insights were gained during previous evaluation, but most of the time you don't find one. And if it is available, most of the time, believe me, sometimes the clients doesn't give you. So they say, okay, you start from fresh new. Okay, and once you have the process map, once you have, you have to work out process evaluation questions. What do you want to, sometime they are part of the TOR that is given to you. And if they are not part of the TOR given to you, then I think just for the sake of guiding your evaluation, exercise, one has to have a process evaluation question. Now, the process evaluation question can include anything. You want to understand the impact of if they have a process monitoring system, you want to look at the impact of the such system. You want to look at how processes are implemented. You want to look at, whether there are deficiencies in compliances. So, it's better to have a few guiding process evaluation questions so that you don't really go, from 0 degree to 360 degree. You have a very definite path, and you can actually work on those. It is always desirable that you work out those process evaluation questions in consultation with the commissioning agency or the organization, so that later on they don't say that you have missed some dimensions. Okay, then we need to have a process indicators. Now, this is very important because I didn't talk about the process indicators. I did talk about that there has to be process indicators earlier, but I'm going to talk about what kind of indicators are called process indicators. Now, again, here I'm saying that I have not seen, or rather, in for example, one of the projects funded by an international agency, the process indicators are mostly about the timeliness and quality. I think somebody also mentioned here earlier. But the process indicators actually can be more than these two. Okay, so what are those process indicators? Okay, so you need to have those markers that basically describe the improvements and the processes. Okay, they're mostly qualitative. So they're mostly qualitative. I mean, I'm not negating or excluding the possibility of having a quantitative indicator as a process indicator, but most of the time those indicators are qualitative ones. One can always get the data in terms of if the project is huge. I'm sure you will get, the number of trainings and the number of times the feedbacks are given, the number of times the course corrections were made. So you might have to have some quantitative data, but the process indicators are mostly qualitative. This is very important part. The results framework. I mean, when I say results framework, in some case, you have output, outcomes, and impact. The results framework. Somewhere we have LFA, logical framework analysis. So process indicators are not part of that set. There you may have output indicator, outcome indicators, impact indicators. You can in fact identify the baseline indicators out of them. You can identify the regular monitoring indicators, but the process indicators usually are not part of the results framework. However, results framework help you in designing the process indicator because you know what kind of results are being achieved or they are trying to be achieved. So, okay, so the process evaluation, of course, is the activity is the basic unit for process evaluation, but TOC informs a lot in terms of what kind of gamut of processes that you might have. So whether they are clearly indicated in your program design or they are just there, by the sense of, a lot many times, people say organized training for teachers. Okay. For that, design material, blah, 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 but they never define how it should be done. So sometimes it's based on the common sense. Program document does not even discuss how it should be done. Sometimes the details are quite, discussed in a quite length. So definitely the process evaluation is mostly about the activity in the process junction, but the TOC help to really determine what kind of processes have been put in place or should be put in place. So in terms of indicators, they are not part of the results framework. If they are not part of the results framework, this simply means that you have to design those indicators. Okay. Meaning, if the program design does not have a list of process indicator, as an evaluator, you need to design those indicators, because without indicators, there's no evaluation. So what we do is we design the indicator, or we take as it is. Now, process indicators mainly are of two types. Few process indicators are standard process indicators. No matter what project, what kind of intervention it is, you will always have those indicators as process indicators. Some intervention depends on the nature of the intervention. Some indicators depends on the nature of intervention. I'll give few examples. Well, when allocating a budget for process monitoring or an evaluation with the frequency of the data collection, how it is different budget-wise from the periodic monitoring and formative or summative evaluation. Okay, I mean, it may have or it may not have a resource implication. It may have a resource implication if you have a separate team for this, or at least one person as a process monitor, but definitely is a separate activity other than the continuous monitoring that the people do. So continuous monitoring data is usually, either comes through the progress reports, right? Or the project staff collected. But the process monitoring, as I said, is a different set of data that it requires from the continuous monitoring. And you again, I mean, you can use the same resource people. Therefore, there's no much of the different, financial implications. You may not have a different budget for that, or you might have to hire one, depends on the scale of the intervention. So I think this is completely up to the availability of budget and also the need of the organization. But ideal form, there has to have as I said earlier, we need to have a process monitor part of M&E team rather than your implementation team. If you have enough human resource available in M&E team, one can perform duties as a process monitor. So in terms of timeline and all, you have a timeline for the periodic monitoring data for the results. You can very well bring the process related monitoring timeline, etc. And you can have a one complex sheet or different complex sheet. So I mean, it's again, it depends, how convenient it is for the program team to do that. The frequency, well, again, as I said earlier, that the frequency depends on what kind of processes you are adopting. As I said, if one-time processes, you just have to collect one-time data or two-time data. Depends, if it's a recurring activities like trainings happening, consultation for the parents keep on happening, well, then probably you might have to collect data multiple times. Well, you can definitely decide that if there are 100 trainings done in a 1 year, okay, we will collect data about 10 trainings as a sample because we do not have enough resources. Okay. Or maybe doing 100, collecting data from 100 trainings for the processes may not give any interesting results because the same things are being repeated. So you can make those decisions. It depends on, you have to decide the frequency of data collection. You can change it also based, if you think that the results are not adequate, you have to increase the frequency of data collection. You have to go and and evaluate the process more often, well, that will definitely have some impact on frequency as well as the resources. Okay, so in terms of process indicator, as I said, some indicators are standards and some indicators, they vary, depends on the very nature of the intervention. So let me give you some examples. This is not a perfect list, but I'm just trying to give you some examples of standard indicators. No matter what kind of processes you are trying to apply, you are always have quality related indicators, because it's intrinsic, it's there, it's already there, that all the processes have to be should follow the quality protocols, right? There will be systems integrated with these processes, whether these are about reporting, the feedback, the performance appraisal, internal reviews, whatever it is. Effectiveness, efficiency, they are always there in any intervention. So no matter what intervention you are implementing or evaluating, there are a set of standard process indicators, and these few of them are here: quality, benchmarking, compliances, systems, effectiveness, and efficiency. But then okay, the key difference between process monitoring and process evaluation. Process monitoring happens during the program implementation, done by internal team. Process evaluation take place during midterm evaluation, mostly, because if you know what is going wrong, you can take the course correction, or sometime even during end-term evaluation also. So process evaluation happens once or twice, mostly done by the third party. Process monitoring is done by your internal team to make sure that you don't really spend years to know what went wrong. You keep on analyzing the data, getting the process data, and so that you know in time, so that you can actually make the course correction. So that's the difference. Process monitoring is the part of the program team, implementation team. Okay, process evaluation is usually done by the third party evaluators. It happens either, the best is midterm evaluation. Sometimes, or some agencies are also, they asked to do it during the end term evaluation if they want to replicate the same project intervention somewhere else. Okay, so one type of indicators I talked about is the process, standard process indicator, right? And then another is contextual, means program specific. Now, program specific, I'm just giving some examples, right? I mean, they can be anything. For example, real-time generating analytics based on the disability data system. That could be one contextual indicator, whether your M&E team is able to give you the real-time analysis of the processes or not. Whether real-time access to advisory is possible. Suppose a lot of agriculture-related intervention, they provide weather, they provide this climate and weather-related advisory to farmers. So the real-time access to such advisories could be another process indicator. Maybe some kinds of, you want to focus on certain set of beneficiaries. So their inclusion, or you want to avoid exclusion, could be another. So my point is that, there are few standards process indicators, no matter what intervention it is, you need to have them because they are, they have to be there. Another is contextual or program specific process indicator, depends on what kind of processes you are adopting. So these are the two sets of process indicators. So any program design ideally needs to have these two sets. Well, you may not write them as under two sets. You can still have a one list of process indicator, but then I think it's better to understand that some of them are standard and some of them are decided based on the nature of the intervention. All right, so we have the process indicators ready. If it is not, available, then process evaluators need to design them. All right, sampling. See, process evaluation, unlike the impact evaluation, where you need to make sure that there's a randomness in selection of respondents. If you use RCT, you have to randomly allocate them to the treatment. In process evaluation, because you need to go to the specific people, so therefore we use mostly judgmental sampling. So you need to know that you need to go to the trainer, you need to go to the teachers who were trained. You need to talk to the principal of the school, headmaster of the school. So mostly it's a judgmental sampling. You want to go to the certain set of people. But then it is recommended just to avoid the bias of the implementers, because sometimes they suggest areas where you need to visit where they have done good, and they might not suggest the areas where their intervention wasn't that good. So in that sense, at each one of the level, right from the province or country or district or villages, in any of these layer, you have to have randomness. So either you select district randomly so that there's no biasness in terms of the implementers suggesting you only go to the better areas, or you select the villages, because respondent is still quite purposefully selected, or just you exercise your judgment whom you want to talk to, other than the beneficiaries, because beneficiaries are usually in a high number, but other stakeholders are only few. So you want to talk to trainers, there may be only few. You want to talk to teachers, not many, great in number. So at one level of selection of either the strata or the geography or the villages, one has to exercise randomness. So that's the standard advice, so that and usually if it is possible, we do it at the village level, so that the implementers whose intervention you are evaluating, they don't really influence the choice of the area and the beneficiaries you want to go and meet. Now, data points. Where did you get the data from? There are two. Please, you can definitely ask a verbal question.
Thank you very much, and a very interesting presentation. My question is that when we are going to identify in some indicators related to the process evaluation, is it not similar as the outputs of the TOC? For the example, let's suppose
Yes.
we are to print 100,000 books for the students. Then the indicator should be received 100,000 books for the school level students in that area.
Yes.
It is similar as the output of the TOC. If we go into, especially then you mentioned that the indicator should be in efficiency, also cover the effectiveness both. When we are going to analyze the effectiveness of this indicator, it should be similar as evaluation metrics.
Okay.
Is differentiation about this process? I'm really sorry for interrupting you.
No, not a problem, not a problem. So I think you asked important questions. See, so suppose if you are supplying 100,000 textbooks, right? Then the output indicators would be the number of copies you supplied or you produced and then you supplied, and the number of students were served with these notebooks. But if at all that is important activity and you have prioritized it for the process monitoring, then not only the number of textbook that you supply, one also needs to look at the quality of content. That becomes one process indicator. Have you followed any national level or curriculum framework that is mostly advised by the policymakers in the government, because they have the quality benchmarks? Have you followed while designing those textbooks? Have you made it innovative enough so that it attracts students? So have you kind of integrated any kinds of pedagogical innovations in the textbook? So all these indicators become the process indicators, which are not output indicators. The output indicators could be the number of textbooks that you have produced or you have given to the students. But then whether they you have followed any standard protocols by any international agencies or the government, whether you have ensured that they follow some quality compliances, whether you ensure that they have included some innovative ways of teaching that material, putting or presenting that material. All these will become process monitoring indicator, which you may not have, or rather you will not have in your TOC framework. In TOC, you will have only the number of a textbook given or produced. Hope I have answered your question.
Oh, thank you very much. It's clear. Thank you.
Okay, so in terms of the data point, Okay, in terms of the data point, though both overlap, both are not mutually exclusive, but there are two sets of data points you get the data from. One, in process evaluation, you have to get the contextual data. Why I'm saying the contextual data? Because processes do interact with the local context. After all, there are stakeholders. They have certain choices. They might have certain cultural variations, and any process that is implemented, it's bound to have certain impact. So one type of data, comes from the context. Another comes from, the implementation. Now, there is a lot of overlap between context and implementation because, beneficiaries are going to be same. Other stakeholders might be same. But then, it is important to understand how processes might have reacted or created some impact if the context was different. And the thing is that we might, we definitely most of the time we get the answer why certain, certain projects give different outcome in the different places, simply because the interaction between the context and the process result into something else, which probably was not, was not even thought about. So the context related data that you can get, of course, beneficiaries are there. Mostly we get into one of the important tools is FGDs, because FGD, focus group discussion, allow us to understand the group think. Now that's a concept, while interviews and surveys are important to understand the individual perspectives, but when you do FGDs, you are able to understand as a group how beneficiaries or other stakeholders think about the program and how they react. So something called group think, it gives you a fair idea about the context and fair idea about the adoption of those processes and how they might have interacted with the context. Well, field level team, because they are very close to the context, very closer to the context. So you might have to talk with the village volunteers and the local, project staff. So your focus would be more on the context within which the program is implemented, rather than the design itself. Because for the design, you can talk to the project director, the province level or the national level project leaders. So and then you have very important the source of data for the context is bystanders, basically the people who are not part of the program. Why I'm saying bystanders? Whenever you get into the the conversation, either in the form of FGD or in the form of interviews, believe me, you always have people around, right? If you don't choose carefully the place of those FGDs, right? If you don't choose that carefully, you are talking to 5 people in a group setting. You have 10 more people surrounding, okay, and they have a 1,000 questions to be asked, and you have to reply to them. Why are you here? Why are you asking this question? What is the benefit? Are we going to get more benefit because of this program? So many things. Okay, they might affect your data collection exercise, but many times what happens, and I have done this, and therefore I have done this successfully. If you are 2-3 people in a team, what usually I do is, or I'll ask my colleague to do is, whenever we are collecting data, talking to people in the form of either in-depth interviews or FGDs, we'll have one more person to actually talk to these bystanders, right? Talking about, they are not beneficiaries, but they just live there. So they are part of the context, they're part of the environment. You talk to them, a lot of things get clearer, and probably you get few things that are bias free. So it helps a lot in terms of understanding what this program is doing to those, not only those who are beneficiaries, but also to those who are not beneficiaries. And that help you to understand, how different processes might have resulted into different kinds of outcomes, which are either helpful or not helpful for the program. So one set of data should come from the context. Another set of data definitely should come from the implementation. And again, you have a similar kind of stakeholder there. You have a beneficiaries, you might have some intermediaries, you have government playing important role. You might have a documents to review. You can also have the routine M&E data. So this is all, you can have the team, project team at the higher level, because they can talk about more about the design and the strategies. So these are the two different set of data points that we should collect data for the process evaluation. One is the context, another is the implementation. Let me go ahead. I have a question from Bhagesh. Okay. Okay. Okay, so well, see, hiring third-party evaluator is understood as a transparent practice, right? So that somebody who does not have any affiliation with the program can evaluate without any prejudice or biasness. So that's number one. Now, how far that person understand the project? Well, I think that's a very important question. So it depends on how you allow that person to immerse with the project. Okay, how you allow that person to, how much time you devote. So more often what I do, suppose if I have to evaluate a program, always I start with in-depth couple of workshop, multiple days workshop, not only one day, with at the different level of program implementation, right from the top to the intermediary level, and then the bottom level, which may be village or urban town or whatever. So there is no timeline that okay, one has to spend 5 days, 10 days, and 1 month, 2 months to understand the program processes. But definitely the organization has to allow the evaluator to get immersed with the processes, and I think that could be one strategy. There is no standard timeline, so I cannot really respond to this, that how much time one needs. Depends on how complex the project is and how experienced the evaluator is. I mean, many times if I have been evaluating the rural development programs, I might not need much of the time to understand what exactly it is if I have all the documents or access to all the documents that are relevant. So really difficult for me to tell you the timeline. But yes, I think it becomes responsibility of the implementing agency to really allow that evaluator to get acquainted with, immersed with, the program design and the program implementation. Okay, so let me go to the next page. This is what the process evaluation, very simple form, process evaluation plan should look like. So what I'm going to do, using the same example of the teachers training, the process map that I showed to you. So there are some activities based on, so you have different processes, you can identify what you're going to evaluate. You can have those indicators here. So recruitment of trainers, suppose the one of the aspects that we want to evaluate is appropriability, means their qualification, their experiences, whether they were appropriate for the, the evaluation, for training the teachers. Okay, so that's to evaluate. What are the aspects to analyze there? As I said, we can analyze their qualification, their experience, and the entire recruitment process. Whether the recruitment process involved face-to-face interview, whether the recruitment process involved a demo presentation, whether the recruitment process involved, some of the past experiences and review of their work that have been done. You will have aspects to analyze. The data source you need to see. What are the data source? Just for the example, since I have written the trainers and the project staff, or maybe trainees you can include. Yeah, data collection methods. For the example sake, it could be structured interview or in-depth interview. And sampling, mostly it's judgmental. So either it could be few, okay, you want to just interact with a few trainers, few trainees, a relevant project staff, or you want to probably have, want to interview all of them, depends on what is the size of the program. So that's one. Another is, suppose another activity is training to teachers. So one is about the recruitment of trainers, another is training. What would you like to evaluate? We would like to evaluate the effectiveness of training. Okay, what are the aspects? One, the quality and coverage of training manual, quality of delivery, pedagogy. So if, for example, if these are the two things that we want to evaluate, data source, again, trainers, teachers means trainees, and teachers feedback given to trainees on the trainings. Probably that could be another important data source. Data collection method, one has to decide, and sampling, whether purposive or convenience based on the number of such respondents available. For example, third activities could be the teaching students. So I'm just covering the first office in the process map, the first trajectory. If you remember, there were 3 different aspects. What to evaluate, maybe effectiveness of training. I want to evaluate whether it is reflected on the teaching or not, and innovation in teaching. These are the aspects to evaluate. What, we want to look at the change in pedagogy. We want to look at whether students are interested, whether learning outcomes have improved or not. Accordingly, you can identify the data source, could be teachers, parents, attendance as a proxy to see whether students are really interested in learning what it is, and results, their test results also as a proxy to understand whether the learning outcomes have improved or not. Well, test results are not a proxy, they are direct indicators, but definitely attendance is a proxy to find out whether they are interested in the current, teaching learning process or not. And then you can have, again, data collection methods and the sampling. So for each, the process that you have, the process junction, you have the indicators, what you want to evaluate, what aspect you will continue with evaluating. You need to have a data source and data collection methods. I think these are, so if you have this, it becomes simple, guided, and you have, a kind of, you have a very systematic approach to address the, the process evaluation. Yes, definitely. It can, again, I said you have to prioritize it, but yes, it can encompass program, HR, procurement, logistics, finance, definitely. Why not? If you have a broad scope, you can use that. Or if you want to prioritize and you just want to have the program implementation as part of it, you can do that as well. All right, so now very practical. Believe me, as an evaluator, we have to face a lot. People ask what would happen, right? And that's where my answer is. Budget, influence a lot. I mean, it determines what kind of process evaluation we're going to have. And this is what it is. I mean, sometimes you do not have much of the budget available, so it might start just review of the program documents, right? And suggesting the major changes that can be made in the program document and the design and the implementation. Then depends on the resources, one can actually do the site visits, FGDs, interviews. If you have more resources, one can actually do the the surveys and actually triangulate the information. Adequate budget can also allow you to do the on-site validation after data analysis is being done. So this is the practical, you don't find in any textbook or anywhere, but it's a practical consideration we have to face when we do the process evaluation. Many times based on the resources, we have to decide the scope of process evaluation, how much and what methodological approach we are going to use. So thank you very much. I had only this much to share with you. Well, there's a lot of things. I teach a course here in my institute. It's like 900 minutes long course, but I tried covering in about 100 minutes, 110 minutes. So thank you very much. If you have any question, please, you can ask me right away.
Yes, sir. Can I ask the
please,
question?
Please.
Yeah. Now, we have learned some evaluation criteria such as relevance, coherence, effectiveness, efficiency, impact, and sustainability. So don't we need to have some concerns on those 6? Thank you.
I lost you in between because there was some, if you can repeat your last sentence after those 6 parameters, what did you say? I just could not hear.
Don't we need to take concerns for all the project that we, all the process?
So again, I said, well, one can have, one can include all the processes. One can prioritize and include what is important. At the outset, and theoretically, one should be taking care of all the processes, and that's where I was saying you have to have for each process junction, you have to have a strategy. But again, it's depend, maybe some of the processes or indicators you want to ignore because they are not so important, and that decision can be taken case by case. So, but theoretically, all 6 components that you have just talked about are important. All right, so I think it was engaging discussion. Thank you very much for posing the questions, and I hope that whatever we have discussed today might provide a basic outline for the process monitoring if you want to develop such system in your case. Thank you very much. Yatin, Randike, over to you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Professor Shyam and Professor Vivek, for the basics of evaluation and also approaching it from different angles. And typically we talk about just program evaluation, or many people end up talking only about impact evaluation, but all these other experimental, non-experimental methods, passive methods were explained very well, and what are you explaining your session, sir, was very useful. I feel all the students of evaluation will find it interesting. Some of it might have found it as a refresher course to what they have learned previously, and many would have found it as new additions to what limited knowledge they have on evaluation. So this was a very engaging workshop for all of us. This is the end of the second workshop for the day and the first day of Eval Fest and the third API conference. We will have a couple of more workshops tomorrow, and then the main session will start. Conference will start from the day after. I see that many YEs are present in this session, so I'm just pasting down the links to join Evaluate India and Evaluate Asia at the bottom in the chat. So please feel free to get registered with us if you are not already registered and if you are from the region. And I also thank everyone else who has helped us organize this workshop properly, the entire production team and the publicity team. And most importantly, all the participants who attended today and have asked so many questions. Be assured that we'll be sharing the material with all of you, with everyone who has registered for this session. If there are any who have not registered for this session, but have attended today, please send us a mail, so we'll also include you in the sharing of all the material. Thank you, everyone.